Chapter 359. The Devil Master was an early great sage. After his birth, he dominated the Grand Xia. Even the Blood Emperor and Venerable Beast paled in comparison to him. However, he was still killed by Lin Yi in the end. In other words, the Devil Master's death was the most aggrieved. First, he looked down on Lin Yi, sitting on the mountain to watch the tigers fight. He wanted to take advantage of the situation. He didn't expect Lin Yi to kill the Blood Emperor. Later, he was injured by Lin Yi's soul mirror. After that, he was suppressed by the human peak saints and invincible saints. When he gained the upper hand, Lin Yi broke through the shackles of the domain. However, he still relied on the great sage's cultivation to suppress Lin Yi, just when he was feeling happy. Unfortunately, Lin Yi entered the Fiend God taboo. A powerful Devil Master was killed by a half-true saint. Even if Lin Yi entered the Fiend God taboo in a short time and became an invincible saint with the help of others, he was still a Fifth Tribulation half-true saint. A Fifth Tribulation half-true saint contending with three great sages and finally winning. Lin Yi, Captain, Lin Yi. After a short moment of silence in the Grand Xia Holy City, the entire Holy City was in an uproar. At this moment, as long as one was a human, there was no one who wasn't excited. Everyone's heart beat with Lin Yi. From hope to despair, they saw hope from despair, and then from hope to despair. In the end, Lin Yi miraculously turned the situation around and killed the Devil Master. This kind of feeling made people have mixed feelings. The final victory belonged to Lin Yi and the humans of the Grand Xia Holy City. For thousands of years, this day was the happiest moment for humanity. This day was also a historical moment for humanity. This day was unforgettable for the humans of the Grand Xia Holy City. The Devil Master fell. His tall body turned into devil chi. Lin Yi reached out and grabbed the two balls of golden light. Without hesitation, the two balls of golden light entered the 9-layer space. His face revealed excitement. The two balls of golden light were naturally the 2 pages of the wordless heavenly book. After putting away the golden light, Lin Yi made a grabbing motion, and a spatial ring fell into his hand. Lin Yi didn't even look at it and directly put it away. His figure flashed, disappearing in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already at the edge of the sky. He chased after the demon Venerable. The human army and experts knew Lin Yi's goal. He wanted to kill the demon Venerables while he was still in his Fiend God taboo state. If the Fiend God taboo was not there, killing the demon Venerables would take a lot more effort. Suppress. A dozen invincible saints appeared in the sacred city of the Xia dynasty. More than 10 invincible saints joined forces to suppress the Devil Master's devil chi. The city was filled with cheers. However, the Great Xia Holy City sent out millions of troops to attack the 4 races. Without the Demon Master, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Master, the 4 races were no match for the human experts and troops no matter how strong they were. This day has finally arrived. Our mission is finally over. The Great Xia Holy City and the city of Weiling. Countless guardians revealed a look of relief on their faces. They had waited for tens of thousands of years, and this day had finally arrived. On this day, they had truly witnessed a miracle. They had seen what it meant to be monstrous and heaven-defying. They finally understood the reason for their existence. Only such a monstrous talent was worthy of their protection. The history of the Great Xia dynasty will unfold in the 9-heaven world. I really didn't expect your origin to be so shocking. In the Great Xia Holy City, there was a 10,000 feet tall altar. Below the altar, a faint voice sounded. A day later, a weak figure appeared in front of the Great Xia Holy City. After the figure landed, it was a young man in green. The young man was extremely weak. He was dragging a broadsword in his hand. His entire body was drenched in blood. Although he was extremely weak, his thin body looked like it would collapse at any time. However, his eyes were sharp and wise. He gave off a faintly discernible and peerless aura. Lin Yi. That's right, he was Lin Yi. A day ago, he killed the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master. Then, he took advantage of the divine demon taboo to chase after the demon master. However, no one expected that the divine demon taboo would disappear just as he caught up with the demon master. Something even more frightening followed closely. With the help of Biluo's power, the divine demon taboo disappeared as well. His entire person seemed to have been sucked dry. The demon master also noticed Lin Ye's situation and laughed maniacally. In this battle, Lin Ye had truly experienced life and death. He had hovered on the edge of life and death. It was even more dangerous than the battle with the Devil Lord. In the end, he had relied on his supreme sacred artifact, divine will, and realm mystique to kill the demon lord. However, he had also suffered terrifying injuries. Even his self-healing body couldn't recover immediately. Lin Ye, since the end of the battle, the Great Xia Holy City had sent out countless super experts to patrol to prevent the remnants of the four races from coming again. When the patrolling experts saw Lin Ye, they couldn't help but be stunned. When they saw Lin Ye's terrible condition, they were extremely shocked. Then, more than 10 saint-level experts came to Lin Ye's side and protected Lin Ye as he entered the city. At the same time, they passed the news of Lin Ye's return to the Guardians. In the Holy City, countless experts saw Lin Ye. The news spread quickly. Lin Ye chased after the Demon Master and returned to the Great Xia Holy City with serious injuries. No one knew whether the Demon Master was alive or not. The Demon Master is slightly stronger than the Blood Emperor. However, the Demon Master can't be compared to the Demon Master. Lin Ye even killed the Demon Master. It should be easy for him to deal with the Demon Master. Looking at his current situation, he should have left the Divine Demon Taboo during the battle. I wonder if the Demon Master is dead. Lin Ye returned. The Demon Master should be dead. Otherwise, Lin Ye wouldn't be able to return in such a state. As long as Lin Ye returns alive, even if the Demon Master isn't dead, he doesn't have much time left. The Great Xia Holy City was in an uproar again. Topics related to Lin Ye filled the entire Holy City. However, after Lin Ye returned to the sacred city of the Great Xia dynasty, he remained in the sacred palace and did not come out again. No one knew how he was doing, let alone whether the Demon Lord was dead or alive. The thing that everyone wanted to know the most was the battle between Lin Ye and the Demon Master. Soon, a piece of news came from the Holy Palace. Lin Ye caught up to the Demon Master and recovered his cultivation to the fifth tribulation half-true saint. After leaving the divine demon taboo, he killed the Demon Master in a bloody battle. The Great Xia Holy City is hunting down the four races and restoring peace to the Great Xia Holy City. The simple yet powerful news spread throughout the Great Xia Holy City. This time, the Great Xia Holy City's experts were even more shocked. Lin Ye had temporarily raised his cultivation to the invincible saint realm, recovered his cultivation to the fifth tribulation half-true saint realm, and even left the divine demon taboo. Under such circumstances, he still killed the Demon Master. This was too terrifying. However, everyone accepted the news. Because this impossible thing had happened to Lin Ye, it made people believe in it. Lin Ye symbolized heaven defying. Chapter 360. In the world of the Great Xia, what the billions of people and experts did not know was that the world was about to undergo a shocking change. This shocking change would change the world of the Great Xia for generations to come. All the guardians of the 8 heavenly cities, they had secretly gathered at the center of the sacred palace. 3,000 guardians. All of them were at the level of the great sage. At this moment, they were all at the center of the sacred palace. Here, there was an altar that was thousands of feet tall. All the guardians were gathered around the altar. Their faces were serious, and their hands were constantly forming mysterious signs. With the support of the signs, the altar gave off a mysterious light. Mysterious runes flickered incessantly. Endless sacred aura descended from the altar. The 3,000 guardians disappeared one by one, turning into a mysterious light of consciousness and flying toward the altar. With the disappearance of each guardian, the sacred aura of the altar became stronger. Time passed by minute. A full 4 hours passed. All of the guardians had disappeared. At this moment, the altar was like a bright pagoda, flashing with a mysterious light. Boom! The moment when the last guardian disappeared. On the altar, a space-time portal appeared without any warning. Lin Yi, who was at the side, witnessed everything with his own eyes. His god-battling team members were with him. They were different from Lin Yi. Lin Yi knew some of the secrets of the Great Xia. He also knew that the Guardians were a wisp of consciousness from the previous ruler of the Great Xia. But the god-battling team members did not know. However, as they watched all of this happen before their very eyes, they were all dumbstruck. Whoosh, whoosh, the space-time portal gave off a light and pulled Lin Yi and the others in. They disappeared from the altar, and when they reappeared, they were already in an underground palace. The entire palace was simple and luxurious, but it was not as dark and damp as the underground palace. Lin Yi looked around and realized that Zhou Baiyu and the others were all gone. There was no one beside him. It has been thousands of years. Finally, someone is here. A voice was transmitted into Lin Yi's ears. The voice was transmitted into his mind as if it was right next to his ear. Vicissitudes of life. Not bad. It had a sense of vicissitudes. Junior is Lin Yi. When Lin Yi heard this voice, even though he was mentally prepared, he couldn't help but be startled. This was the place where the Grand Xia had ruled for tens of millions of years. Although the ruler of the Grand Xia had long since fallen, it still made him extremely vigilant. Come to the main palace. That voice was incomparably calm. He asked Lin Yi to go to the main hall. Yes. Lin Yi nodded and replied with the attitude of taking things as they came. He walked in the direction of the sound. Soon, he arrived at a spacious palace. There was nothing in the palace. However, on the main seat sat a handsome young man. The young man exuded an unparalleled aura, and between his eyebrows, there was a faint shining mark. However, this young man gave him an extremely unreal feeling. It was like an illusion. Greetings, senior. Lin Yi walked to the center of the main hall and glanced at the young man. Suppressing the shock in his heart, he bowed to the young man. As a divine sage, he couldn't see through the young man in front of him. Needless to say, this young man was the former ruler of the Grand Xia. When a martial artist's cultivation reached a certain level, they would be able to stay young forever. Some experts looked like young men, but in fact, they had lived for thousands of years. No need to be so polite. I am the ruler of the Grand Xia, and now I am just a remnant consciousness. The moment the altar opened, my remnant consciousness entered the countdown. After 6 hours, my remnant consciousness will completely disappear from this world. With your arrival, I am free. The ruler of the Grand Xia sized up Lin Yi. After a long time, he retracted his gaze, and there was a satisfied look in his eyes. Senior, what do you have to teach me? Lin Yi looked at the ruler of the Grand Xia and asked. He was looking forward to it, because the secrets of the Grand Xia would be revealed in front of him. Of course, the more he knew, the more he had to pay. However, he was clear about one thing, and that was, from the moment he entered the Grand Xia and obtained the first page of the wordless heavenly book, the wheel of fate had already started to turn. All of this was destined to happen. Let me tell you a story. The ruler of the Grand Xia said in a calm tone. He pointed to the chair in front of him and motioned for him to sit down. Thank you, senior. Lin Yi didn't stand on ceremony. He walked to the chair and sat down, listening carefully to the story of the ruler of the Grand Xia. He knew that this story was about the ruler of the Grand Xia and the Grand Xia world, and it was also a secret that he wanted to know. The shocking conspiracy that Biluo mentioned would slowly unfold in front of him. The ruler of the Grand Xia was the key. Millions of years ago, the Grand Xia world was prosperous, and the cultivation civilization had reached an unprecedented peak. The entire Grand Xia world was prosperous, and in the sacred city, there was an emperor with peerless talent. Within 1,000 years, he had already reached the invincible Saint King, broke the shackles, and rushed to the supreme immortal realm. He was the first person in the Grand Xia world to successfully break through to the deity realm. He obtained the Tao deity position and entered the 9 heavens great world. He, who was peerless and unparalleled, met a peerless heaven's proud daughter of heaven. The ruler of the Grand Xiao world spoke slowly. At this point, he couldn't help but stop. There was a look of reminiscence in his eyes, as if he had seen everything beautiful in the past. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl into a faint smile. But it didn't take long. The son of the 9 heavens' divine master, heaven's proud divine king, took a fancy to the heaven's pride. He forced the heaven's pride to drink a sword and commit suicide. Heaven's proud divine king didn't let her die, but imprisoned her, and in the name of colluding with the foreign races, locked the heaven's pride into the God-refining domain and suffered the pain of God refining. Unintentionally, the heaven's pride found out that heaven's proud divine king was the one who colluded with the foreign races and wanted to join forces with the foreign races to get rid of the 9 heavens' divine master. This was fate. Heaven's proud divine king knew that the heaven's pride had received this news and sent the heaven's pride back to the Grand Xiao world. He had people bury the Grand Xiao world, and at the same time released countless demons, demon lords, and the Blood Clan into the Grand Xiao world, causing the Grand Xiao world to fall into an abyss of suffering. From then on, the people of the Grand Xiao world were not only in an abyss of suffering, but also unable to break the shackles of attaining the Tao and becoming a god. The ruler of the Grand Xiao world said in a calm tone, but there was a painful expression on his face. Lin Yi knew that the story that the ruler of the Grand Xiao world was telling was actually his own story. The heaven's pride was the ruler of the Grand Xiao world. However, Lin Yi didn't hear the ruler of the Grand Xiao world mention the wordless heavenly book. The heaven's pride is you, senior. Does heaven's proud divine king know of the existence of the wordless heavenly book? Lin Yi looked at the ruler of the Grand Xiao world and asked. He doesn't know about the wordless heavenly book. Not to mention him, even a 9 heavens divine master has never heard of the wordless heavenly book. It is one of the 9 great divine books in the universe, and it is the most mysterious and miraculous existence. The ruler of the Grand Xiao world shook his head. The Grand Xiao world was buried entirely because the ruler of the Grand Xiao world knew the secret of heaven's proud divine king. The ruler of the Grand Xiao world was imprisoned in the God-refining domain because heaven's proud divine king took a fancy to the ruler of the Grand Xiao world's lover. Senior, you said that the heavenly book is the last lifeline of the Grand Xiao world. What does that mean? Lin Yi asked. Chapter 361. It's simple because the heavenly book has always been in the Great Xiao world. However, this is a secret of the Great Xiao world, and only the master of the Great Xiao world knows about it. The master of the Great Xiao world finally smiled. The wordless heavenly book was the foundation of the Great Xiao world. No one knew that the wordless heavenly book existed in the Great Xiao world. However, the wordless heavenly book had always been in the Great Xiao world. I see. How did the demonic lord, blood emperor, and the demon master know about the wordless heavenly book? Lin Yi suddenly realized. It turned out that the wordless heavenly book had always been in the Great Xiao world, and only the master of the Great Xiao world knew about it. However, he immediately thought of the demonic lord, blood emperor, and the demon master. These 3 guys knew about the wordless heavenly book, and they shouldn't have known about such a magical treasure. I'll let them know about it on purpose. The Great Xiao world is buried, and no news about them can be spread out. This is the rule of the Great Xiao world, and even I can't change it. Their existence is to train you. Moreover, you only have 1 page of the wordless heavenly book after fusion. The other 8 pages of the real wordless heavenly book are with me. The master of the Great Xiao world said calmly. The doubts in Lin Yi's heart were solved bit by bit. At the end, Lin Yi finally understood the reason for the demon master and blood emperor's existence. It was normal when he thought about it. With the strength of the Great Xiao world, even after it was buried, the humans of the Great Xiao world were still in charge. Moreover, the real wordless heavenly book was in the hands of the master of the Great Xiao world. Even if other people got 9 pages of the wordless heavenly book and fused them, they would only fuse 1 page, which was 1/9 of the real wordless heavenly book. Without the complete wordless heavenly book, even if they got 8 pages, they would be trash and useless. Senior, I'm here. Is it because of talent or something else? Lin Yi looked at the master of the great Xia world seriously. This was his biggest doubt. Talent is one of them. The main thing is that I saw something on you. This item doesn't belong to this world, not even the Nine Heavens world. It came from a very, very distant universe. I was just suspicious at first, but I didn't really care. What I'm really concerned about is the treasure you used to deal with the demonic lord. The master of the great Xia looked at Lin Yi. His eyes were filled with doubt and anticipation. He knew about the things that Lin Yi had on him from ancient books. He didn't care about them at first, but he didn't expect that he would actually see the things in the ancient books after thousands of years. This thing was actually nothing much. It was mainly because of the owner of this thing. Senior, you're referring to the soul mirror. Could it be that Senior knows this junior's treasure? Lin Yi was shocked. To be able to tell a person's origin from a treasure, this was simply too unreal. Moreover, the soul mirror was given to him by his master whom he had never met before. In this world, no one would know the origin of this treasure. Who would have thought that the master of the great Xia dynasty would notice the soul mirror? From ancient books, Silver Star Armor, Silver Star Sacred Sword, and Soul Mirror. The master of the great Xia looked at Lin Yi. He did recognize the Silver Star Armor and Silver Star Sacred Sword, but these two sacred weapons were destroyed, and Lin Yi didn't intend to take them. He didn't expect the master of the great Xia dynasty to know about the Silver Star Armor and Silver Star Sacred Sword. Logically speaking, these two sacred weapons were very low level and couldn't catch the master of the great Xia dynasty's attention. They were left behind by my master. Lin Yi didn't hide anything. Anyway, he had never met his master and couldn't be considered a real master. He was just a disciple in name. Your master is in this world. A look of shock flashed across the master of the great Xia dynasty's eyes. As powerful as he was, he couldn't remain calm after hearing that Lin Yi was the disciple of that legendary figure. Even though he had already fallen and was just a wisp of remnant soul, he would vanish in 6 hours. No, I haven't seen my master either. He wants me to surpass my senior sisters and senior brothers within an era. By the way, does Senior know my master? Lin Yi revealed a look of anticipation. The master of the great Xia dynasty was a peerless figure thousands of years ago who had embarked on the path of God. Such a figure might have heard of the master that he had never met. He was curious and expectant about his master and wondered what kind of master he was. Surpass your senior brothers and senior sisters within an era. But to be honest, compared to your master, I'm thousands of miles away. I really can't understand his vision. Putting everything else aside, your senior brother can destroy the entire 9 heavens great worlds with a single finger. Your senior brother is a legend. I've only heard of him in legends. As for your master, the Tao of heaven can't be spoken of. When the master of the great Xia dynasty mentioned Lin Yi's senior brother, his face revealed a look of admiration. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. If Lin Yi's master was in this world, he could reverse time and come back to life. When he heard Lin Yi say that his master wanted him to surpass his senior brothers and senior sisters within an era, the master of the great Xia dynasty was completely dumbfounded. He really couldn't understand what kind of existence the master of a legend was. Lin Yi was a heaven-defying monster. But it was completely impossible for him to surpass his senior brothers and senior sisters within an era. Could it be that he couldn't see that Lin Yi was even more heaven-defying? However, the more it was like this, the greater his hope. He was more relieved that the wordless heavenly book was in Lin Yi's hands. Senior, you summoned me here. I wonder what guidance you have for me. Lin Yi was shocked. He didn't expect his senior brother to be so terrifying that he could destroy the 9 heavens great worlds with a single finger. Then, how powerful was his master? After a long silence, he asked the master of the great Xia dynasty. When he first arrived, he asked. However, the master of the great Xia dynasty didn't tell him directly. 3 things. First, fuse with the wordless heavenly book, and you'll be the master of the great Xia dynasty. Second, save the great Xia dynasty and send the crime of heaven's proud deity king for burying the great Xia dynasty and colluding with foreign races to the Nine Heavens Court. Third, if one day you can reach 1/10,000th of your master's strength, reverse time and space, and revive me once, because you have the power of time and space. The master of the great Xia dynasty said. He stated his purpose. He had waited for tens of thousands of years just to find the next ruler of Grand Xia, to save the world of Grand Xia, to let heaven's proud God King receive the punishment he deserved. However, what he did not expect was that Lin Yi would appear in the world of Grand Xia. Lin Yi had the power of time and space, and he was the junior brother of the legendary figure. Just based on Lin Yi's background and identity, he couldn't find a more suitable person than Lin Yi. If I don't agree, Senior, are you going to kill me? Lin Yi looked at the master of the great Xia dynasty with a smile and said, the wordless heavenly book was a shocking conspiracy. If what the master of the great Xia dynasty said was true, then even the master of the great Xia dynasty didn't know how the wordless heavenly book appeared in the great Xia dynasty. Thinking of Biluo's words, Lin Yi couldn't help but become serious. He was now considering. Chapter 362. I can't do it either. The lord of the great Xia dynasty wasn't surprised by Lin Yi's words at all, as if it was a matter of course. He naturally didn't dare to kill Lin Yi because of Lin Yi's identity. Moreover, even if he was the master of the great Xia dynasty in the past, he was now just a remnant soul. It was obviously impossible for him to kill Lin Yi. Then I promise you, Senior. But I can't promise you. I can only try my best. Lin Yi looked at the lord of the great Xia dynasty seriously and said, it was too difficult to save the great Xia dynasty. Resurrecting the lord of the great Xia dynasty? What a joke. Even in this world full of danger, he wouldn't make promises casually, because he wouldn't make promises that he wasn't sure of. After making a promise, he had to do it. Okay. The lord of the great Xia dynasty nodded. He was even more satisfied with Lin Yi's answer, because Lin Yi didn't make promises easily. From this point, one could see Lin Yi's character. He wouldn't make promises easily if he couldn't do it. As long as he made a promise, he would do it even if he had to die. The great Xia dynasty had been buried for thousands of years, and he didn't have much hope. He didn't even think about resurrecting it. He just didn't expect to meet Lin Yi. Lin Yi had the power of time and space, and Lin Yi's master was the master of a legendary figure. From this, he saw a glimmer of hope. Next, Lin Yi merged the 9 pages of the wordless heavenly book in his sea of consciousness. After the fusion, only 1 page of the wordless heavenly book was left. The other 8 pages were all in the hands of the lord of the great Xia dynasty, under the altar in the center of the sacred palace of the great Xia dynasty. Lai Tenyu, Sun Wuyu, Xue Feng, and the others. They each entered a palace. Right now, you could become a saint in 1 step. Your future is limitless. In a small palace in the underground palace, Lai Tenyu was in a light screen, and a mysterious light flickered on his body. This light was the unparalleled blade domain. Lai Tenyu cultivated the blade Dao. He was born for sabers. Lai Tenyu looked excited when he sensed the unparalleled saber domain. With such a powerful saber domain, his cultivation would soar to the sky. Just as he was getting excited, a faintly discernible voice reached his ears. Who? Lai Tenyu was shocked. He looked around, his mind tense. However, there was no one around. I am the world spirit. The faintly discernible voice once again rang in Lai Tenyu's ears. World spirit. Becoming a saint in a single step? What do you mean? There is no free lunch in the world. If there is a reward, there must be a price to pay. If I have to pay something that exceeds my bottom line, I would rather not become a saint than agree. Lai Tenyu was shocked. Was it even possible to become a saint in a single step? However, when he thought about how this was the world of the Grand Xia, anything could happen. He was not a fool. On the contrary, he was incredibly smart. He knew that if there was a reward, there would be a price to pay. He definitely had to pay something. Who didn't want to become a saint? As long as one was a living creature, one would want to become a saint. However, there are only a few who could really become a saint. Out of hundreds of millions of humans, there might not be one who could become a saint. Even the most monstrous genius might not be able to become a saint. Becoming a saint was a good thing, but one had to have a bottom line or a limit. Follow the new master of the Grand Xia forever. Traitors will be doomed eternally. The faintly discernible voice said calmly. The new master of the Grand Xia? Which emperor is it? Lai Tenyu was stunned. He immediately understood that the world spirit gave him the chance to become a saint for the new master of the Grand Xia, and let him follow him. However, he still didn't know who the new master of the Grand Xia was. He had never even heard of the master of the Grand Xia. His first reaction was to think of the 10 emperors of the Grand Xia sacred city. The new master of the Grand Xia, your captain Lin Yi. The faintly discernible voice said something that shocked Lai Tenyu. Captain, the master of the Grand Xia. When Lai Tenyu heard the faintly discernible voice, he initially thought that he had heard wrongly or that the other party had said wrongly. However, in the end, he was sure that he hadn't heard wrongly or that the other party had said wrongly. Instead, it was a piece of real news. However, he still couldn't believe that it was true. Although the captain was monstrous and heaven-defying and was an invincible demon who could step into the fiend god taboo, the kind that only appeared once in 10 million years, even so, it was impossible for him to become the master of the Grand Xia. What was the master of the Grand Xia? Although he wasn't sure. As long as one wasn't a fool, one would be able to guess that it must be the ruler of the Grand Xia. The controller. The ruler. This was a pinnacle civilization from 10 million years ago. Compared to the current heavenly purification territory, it was many times stronger. Even if it was drowned in the years of history, it was still an invincible existence. The ruler of such an existence was inconceivable. He didn't expect that his captain would become the ruler of this world. That's right. I'll give you 15 minutes to consider. I'll reply in 15 minutes. After the faintly discernible voice finished speaking, it disappeared. The entire small palace was empty and silent. The expression on Lai Tenyu's face kept changing. Not only him, but in the other small palaces in the underground palace under the altar, the same situation as Lai Tenyu also happened. The members of the god-battling team were all shocked and shocked. Finally, they fell into deep thought. This would be the turning point of their fate. I agree. I'll follow the captain forever. I agree. If I betray him, I'll be consigned to eternal damnation. I promise to follow the captain forever and never betray him. 15 minutes later, the 14 members of the god-battling team all agreed to follow Lin Yi. After entering the world of the Grand Xia, Lin Yi led them to the peak and trampled all the peak-level geniuses who looked down on them. Lin Yi was a miraculous existence. They respected Lin Yi from the bottom of their hearts and worshipped Lin Yi. They followed Lin Yi without any strings attached. Moreover, they knew Lin Yi wasn't a disciple of a large sect or family. He didn't have a great background and didn't have a huge amount of resources for his cultivation. But even so, Lin Yi was able to dominate his peers and suppress the evildoers of an era. Such a person could soar to the sky as long as there was a supporting point. Now, Lin Yi had become the ruler of the Grand Xia, which was a supporting point. They knew that he might be considered an extraordinary evildoer in their own family, but he was nothing in the Tianyang Empire, let alone the entire Divine Mainland, let alone the world outside the Divine Mainland. The turning point of their fate had arrived, and they didn't hesitate to seize it. We'll leave here in 10 days. The faintly discernible voice reached the ears of Lai Tenyu and the others. At this moment, Chapter 363. In the main hall, Lin Yi sat cross-legged, his entire body and mind focused on the fusion of the wordless heavenly book. Opposite him, the figure of the Lord of Great Xia was getting fainter and fainter. His aura was getting weaker and weaker. It was as if he could vanish into thin air at any time. In this situation, the Lord of Great Xia in front of him was really just a remnant soul, a phantom. However, the Lord of Great Xia was so powerful that the phantom left behind was no different from a real person. Time. Minutes and seconds passed. Finally, all 9 pages of the wordless heavenly book fused together. In his sea of consciousness, A magical golden light flickered and rotated. In this magical golden light, there was a magical book, but there was not a single word on the book. Lin Ye's spiritual will moved, and the golden book disappeared, turning into a wisp of spiritual will. This golden book was the wordless heavenly book. He opened his eyes with a calm expression on his face. However, when he saw the Lord of the Great Xia dynasty's silhouette getting weaker and weaker, his state of mind couldn't help but fluctuate. The Lord of the Great Xia dynasty, who had broken through the sacred mirror thousands of years ago, had ended up in such a state. Life, the affairs of the world were unpredictable. "Senior," he shouted. However, the Lord of Great Xia could no longer answer. However, on the face of the Lord of Great Xia that was about to disappear, there was a faint smile. This smile was relief and anticipation. After tens of thousands of years of waiting, there was finally an illusory expectation. At the moment before the Lord of Great Xia disappeared, the Lord of Great Xia's phantom hand pointed in a direction. Immediately after, all the phantoms disappeared. In the entire palace, there was no longer the Lord of Great Xia, only Lin Yi. Whoosh, a magical light landed on Lin Ye's body, but this light quickly fused with Lin Yi and disappeared. On his body, there was an invisible fate. Lin Yi had seen this kind of fate on the Emperor. It was a fate that only a superior could have. At this moment, he understood. He was already the Lord of Great Xia, the ruler of the world of Great Xia. "I'm the new Lord of the Grand Xia world." Lin Yi stood up. He said indifferently. His entire body exuded an unparalleled aura. It was the kind of aura that only a superior could have, suppressing the world and crushing all directions. Step by step, he walked towards the direction the Lord of Great Xia pointed before he disappeared. That direction was the seat of the Lord of Great Xia. Without hesitation, he slowly sat on it. Boom, the moment he sat down, the radiance descended and the seven-colored light shrouded him. Amidst the radiance, mystical power, together with Lin Yi, they rose upwards. Soon, Lin Yi appeared at the top of the altar at the center of the sacred palace. The altar was 1,000 feet tall, towering above the clouds. This was the center of the holy city of the Grand Xia. It symbolized power and strength. Rumble, rumble at this moment. The entire sacred city of the Great Xia dynasty burst into a seven-colored spirit chi light. The spirit chi light soared into the sky, making the entire sacred city of the Great Xia dynasty look like a divine realm. It was so beautiful that it looked like a painting. What happened? This is... The heavens and earth are showing signs of auspiciousness. The new overlord of Grand Xia is born. He is the new overlord of Grand Xia. The world of Grand Xia finally has a new overlord. It's been millions of years. There were billions of people and experts in the Great Xia Holy Palace. Everyone was shocked by the mystical change. They couldn't help but look towards the center of the Great Holy Palace. When they saw Lin Yi at the top of the altar, they were shocked and started discussing. But soon, some experts realized what was going on. They knew that Lin Yi was the Lord of Great Xia. After millions of years, the Great Xia finally had a new Lord of Great Xia. "I am Lin Yi. I am the Lord of Great Xia. I will lead the Great Xia to glory and break the shackles. Demons, foreign races, and blood races will no longer exist. The demons will be your training targets." Lin Yi walked down from his seat. He floated in the void at the top of the altar. His faint voice spread throughout the Great Xia Holy Palace through a mystical power. This was the power of the Lord of Great Xia. The entire Great Xia was like his sea of consciousness. He was the master. He dominated this world. Lord of Great Xia, Lord of Great Xia, Lord of Great Xia. Lin Ye's voice fell. Hundreds of millions of experts in the Great Xia Holy Palace half knelt. They respected him from the bottom of their hearts. Not only was he the Lord of Great Xia, but he had also killed the Blood Emperor, the Demon Lord, and the Demon Venerables in front of all the people and experts of the Great Xia. With his leadership, the experts of the Great Xia believed that the Great Xia would walk towards glory and the pinnacle of civilization. Among the experts half knelt in the Holy Palace, there were also countless monstrous experts from the heavenly purification territory. They were shocked. They couldn't understand why Lin Yi had become the lord of Great Xia. Under countless respectful gazes, Lin Ye's figure disappeared and returned to the underground palace under the altar. Just as he landed, 3 jade scrolls appeared in front of him. The jade scrolls floated in front of him. He reached out, and his divine consciousness entered the jade scrolls. Soon, Lin Yi understood the information in the 3 jade scrolls. The first one was the evidence of the former lord of Great Xia colluding with the foreign races. The second one was the cultivation method of the former lord of Great Xia, as well as the martial skills and treasures he had mastered. The third one recorded the method the former lord of Great Xia used to rule the Great Xia. It told Lin Yi that after Lin Yi left the Great Xia would enter the era of cultivation and disappear from the heavenly purification territory. Only when Lin Yi could truly protect the Great Xia would the Great Xia truly appear in this starry sky. The trouble that Lin Yi was originally worried about was no longer trouble. What he was worried about was that everything he had done in the Great Xia would be leaked to the heavenly purification territory. If that happened, he would be snatched by countless peerless experts. Now he wasn't worried, because the monstrous experts from the outside, before they left the Great Xia, part of their memories would be erased. Lin Ye's heaven-defying abilities, Lin Ye's opportunities, Lin Ye's identity, all of these would disappear from the minds of the monstrous experts from the outside. They would disappear without a trace. He composed himself. He walked out of the main hall and returned to his cultivation palace in the Holy Palace. 10 more days. Lin Yi muttered to himself. 10 days later, the monstrous experts from the outside would leave this place. From then on, the Great Xia would disappear and enter a true dust-covered state. Although he was the ruler of this world, he could plunder all the resources here. But he wouldn't do that. This world would return to its original state. Everything would return to normal. The hidden resources and treasures would have to be discovered by the experts of the Great Xia and the people in the kills themselves. He would never take any resources from the Great Xia again. Chapter 364. Time passed day by day. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. This day would be the day when the geniuses of the heavenly purification territory would leave the world of Great Xia. In the palace, Lin Yi closed his eyes slightly. Captain, Captain. Finally, a familiar voice sounded. The person he was waiting for finally appeared. Since Lai Tenyu and the others followed him into the underground palace, he hadn't seen Lai Tenyu and the others again. He didn't know what they were doing and what they had encountered. Come in, Lin Yi said. With a wave of his hand, the door of the palace room opened. Lai Tenyu and the others walked in and came to him. Congratulations, Captain. Congratulations, Captain. After the 14 members of the God-battling team came in, they all congratulated Lin Yi. They would follow Lin Yi forever, but they wouldn't show their relationship unless it was absolutely necessary. There was no distinction between master and servant. It's not much. They all became saints directly. Lin Yi glanced at Lai Tenyu and the others. Each of them exuded a terrifying aura fluctuation, the aura of a saint. Moreover, it was a very powerful saint. He didn't expect that in just 10 days, Lai Tenyu and the others had already become saints. Maybe it's among the people from the heavenly purification territory who came in. It's because we become saints. Needless to say, it must be so. If we go out, I don't know how many geniuses will be killed. I don't know what those geniuses who look down on us will think. Look at you. You're a saint, but your state of mind is worse than a celestial. We're saints now. We have to look like saints. Every time, Captain's cultivation is the lowest, but the most powerful. Speaking of cultivation strength, Shui Feng and the others were very excited and relaxed. In 10 days, they had become saints. Their strength was extremely terrifying. It's time to leave. Let's go. Lin Yi stood up and walked towards the center of the sacred palace. The altar was thousands of feet high and towered into the clouds. This was the space-time teleportation gate that could teleport them out of the Grand Xia. When they arrived, Countless monstrous experts from the heavenly purification territory had already arrived. When they saw Lin Yi and the others, they couldn't help but lower their heads, not daring to look at Lin Yi. There was no longer any jealousy in his heart, because they knew that they had lost the right to be jealous. A total of 2,300 people have entered the Grand Xiao World ruins. When we made it out alive, there were less than 300 of us. It's a narrow escape, but your gains in the Grand Xiao are enough to change your lives. Lin Yi walked up to the space-time teleportation gate. His gaze swept across all the monstrous experts present. At this moment, although his tone was very calm, it gave people a feeling of supremacy. It was the kind of power that only a superior person would have. No one dared to underestimate him. Let's go. None of the monstrous geniuses present dared to speak. Lin Yi waved his hand. Suddenly, the space-time teleportation gate erupted with a mysterious light. The moment the space-time teleportation gate opened, a brilliance scattered above the altar. The brilliance enveloped all the monstrous geniuses present. In the brilliance, all the experts seemed to be imprisoned. Soon, the brilliance disappeared. All the experts revealed a trace of doubt and confusion in their eyes. They didn't know what had happened. It was as if they had lost their memories. Hey, where's this place? Lin Yi, it's you. Is the 3 years up? The space-time teleportation gate. We're going to be teleported out. A moment later, all the experts woke up. Only confusion and doubt appeared on their faces. There were many monstrous geniuses who didn't even fear Lin Yi at all and treated Lin Yi as an opponent. It was as if they didn't know that Lin Yi was invincible in the Grand Xiao world. Lin Yi understood this situation. Many of the experts present had their memories erased. Everything related to Lin Yi's achievements and cultivation strength, as well as everything that had happened in the Grand Xiao world, had been erased from these experts' memories. The only thing that didn't change was only 14 people, including Lai Tenyu. Asterisk whoosh, whoosh, asterisk, all the monstrous geniuses flew towards the space-time teleportation gate. After entering the gate, they disappeared. In a short 10 breaths of time, everyone had left the Grand Xiao world. Only the members of the War God Squad didn't leave, as well as Nangong Siya. Senior apprentice sister, are you waiting for me? Lin Yi looked at Nangong Siya and asked with a smile. He knew a portion of Nangong Siya's memories. However, the memories she had erased were all very important parts regarding Lin Yi and the world of Grand Xia. These memories were only a 10,000th of the memories she had left behind in the world of Grand Xia. Naturally, Nangong Xia wouldn't forget about bringing him to the Nangong family. Of course, a faint smile appeared on Nangong Xia's beautiful face. Then let's go. Lin Yi smiled. After speaking, he walked towards the space-time teleportation gate. When he arrived at the gate, he didn't hesitate at all. He took a step forward and disappeared into the gate. Then, Nangong Xia, Lai Tenyu, and the others followed closely behind. At the edge of the boundless sea, more than 20 saints have been waiting here for 3 years. 3 years ago today, the monstrous geniuses of the 8 foreign races, the Heavenly Sun Empire and the Heavenly Jin Empire, opened the space-time gate here and entered the Grand Xiao World ruins. Those who entered the Grand Xiao World ruins were all the top monstrous geniuses of the heavenly purification territory. They would train there for 3 years. Today was the last day of the 3 years. It was also the day that more than 2,000 top monstrous geniuses of the heavenly purification territory returned. The premise was they had to be alive. Only those who were alive had a chance to return. Only those who truly returned could be considered alive. Heavenly Sun Empire, Heavenly Jin Empire, the 8 foreign races. Naturally, they wanted more monstrous geniuses from their own camps to return, because those who could return from the Grand Xiao world would most likely become saints. Moreover, the Grand Xiao world ruins were filled with opportunities and countless resources. Those who returned would definitely have obtained countless resources and treasures. Rumble, rumble. It was noon, the sea that was originally calm and peaceful. At this moment, a monstrous wave erupted. The entire sea was shrouded in a mysterious light that was extremely dazzling. The saints from the 3 camps could no longer differentiate between heaven and earth. Soon, in the endless light, figures appeared in the vision of the saints. Seeing these figures, the saints from the three camps were delighted, because the monstrous geniuses who had entered the Grand Xia World ruins had finally returned. As for how many of them could survive, that would depend on luck and strength. Whoosh! Whoosh! The monstrous geniuses of the Heavenly Sun Empire walked out of the light and came to the side of Lord Cloud Saint. The monstrous geniuses of the Heavenly Gene Empire naturally returned to the side of the Heavenly Gene Empire. The monstrous geniuses of the 8 foreign races returned to the side of the saints from the 8 major foreign races. The light slowly disappeared. The saints from the 3 camps had extremely ugly expressions because the disappearance of the light meant that the entrance to the Grand Xia World ruins was about to close, and there were only a few dozen monstrous geniuses beside them. Chapter 365. The light that filled the sky gradually disappeared. One by one, the figures returned to their own camps. 109 people from the Heavenly Gene Empire returned. This was the camp with the most powerful people returning. Among these people, most of them had reached the sage-to-be level, and 3 of them had broken through the shackles to become saints. The saints from the Heavenly Sun Empire who were waiting were all overjoyed. A total of 77 people from the 8 foreign races returned. However, although all of them had reached the sage-to-be level, none of them had reached the saint level. 93 people from the Heavenly Sun Empire returned. Similarly, all of them had reached the sage-to-be level, but none of them had reached the saint level. Lord Yunsheng had a solemn look on his face. His eyes scanned the sky above the sea, searching, but he couldn't see anyone else. Have you seen Lin Yi? After confirming that no one would come out of the Great Xia World ruins alive, Lord Yunsheng turned around and asked the powerful people from the Heavenly Sun Empire. One of the most powerful people he had high hopes for, Lin Yi. He was extremely disappointed that he hadn't returned from the Great Xia World ruins. Moreover, none of his team members had returned. Lord Yunsheng. When we were teleporting, we saw Lin Yi. We left first, but we don't know what happened after that. Ming Yang stepped forward, bowed to Lord Yunsheng, and answered. He was overjoyed. He was the happiest that Lin Yi had died in there. However, he didn't show it on his face. Did something go wrong during the teleportation? That's possible. In the past, it was common for people to die during teleportation. It's a pity that such a powerful person died. Some of the powerful people from the Heavenly Sun Empire discussed softly. In the Great Xia World ruins, many of their memories had been erased. They couldn't remember much about Lin Yi's miracles. Naturally, they didn't know how terrifying Lin Yi was at this time. In other words, their impression of Lin Yi was still at the time when Lin Yi had defeated Tian Yi. From their point of view, although Lin Yi had defeated Tian Yi the last time, Tian Yi had been defeated by Lin Yi. However, it was possible that their rate of growth wasn't fast enough. Now that they had obtained a lot of resources and opportunities in the ruins of the Grand Xia, their cultivation had reached the half-step sage level. Lin Yi wasn't their match at all. Yunsheng, the Heavenly Sun Empire, isn't doing well this time. Saint Yunyuan of the Tianjin Empire. Looking at the group of monstrous experts from the Tianjin Empire, their faces were filled with joy. Although the percentage of people who survived this time was much lower than the previous time, 3 saints had appeared this time. They had directly become saints in the Great Xia World ruins. In comparison, the Tianjin Empire was the winner this time. On the other hand, the Heavenly Sun Empire didn't have as many people as the Heavenly Gene Empire. They didn't have a single saint. Showing off, Lord Yunsheng said indifferently. He was already in a bad mood, and he didn't expect to be provoked by his old rival. This made him even more displeased. However, as the Grand Tutor of the Heavenly Sun Empire, his status was not ordinary. He had to pay attention to his manners and demeanor at all times, so he did not argue with Saint Yunyuan. Cloud Saint, that is the truth. I heard that Cloud Saint is extremely powerful. I wonder if you can teach me a thing or two. On the side of the Tianjin Empire, there was a monstrous expert called Chen Shuani. He had entered the top 20 on the world's heaven leaderboard, and his strength was terrifying. Half a year ago, he had become a saint. He was one of the top monstrous experts from the Tianjin Empire who had entered the Great Xiao World ruins. He was also one of the 3 saints who had become saints. He looked at Lord Yunsheng with a faint smile on his face. As a saint, he didn't take Lord Yunsheng seriously. In his heart, as a saint, he was a few levels stronger than the other saints. Now is the time to make a name for himself. As long as he defeated Yunsheng, the Grand Tutor of the Heavenly Sun Empire, he would become even more famous. Do you think you can challenge me just because you have become a saint? Lord Yunsheng's face was cold. What kind of status did he have? Not to mention that he was a veteran saint. His status alone was not something that ordinary saints could provoke. This was because he represented the Grand Tutor of the Heavenly Sun Empire. Now, a junior who had become a saint wanted to step on his shoulders to make a name for himself. Not only him, but all the saints and monstrous experts from the Heavenly Sun Empire were furious. How do you know if you don't try? Chen Xuanyi smiled. If he hadn't become a saint, he wouldn't have dared to provoke Lord Yunsheng. Now that he had become a saint, his cultivation level was the same as Lord Yunsheng's. Naturally, there was no difference in status. Moreover, he had obtained many treasures and opportunities in the Great Xiao World ruins. He was confident that he could defeat Yunsheng easily. Crash! At this moment, a crack appeared in the void. The crack was like a machete. It emitted a dazzling light that made countless experts unable to open their eyes. The crack disappeared in a flash. The dazzling light also disappeared, and the world returned to normal. All the experts present looked at where the crack had appeared. When they saw where the crack had appeared, they were all shocked. They saw more than a dozen figures appeared in the void. Each figure exuded an unparalleled saint aura. Their saint aura was more powerful and terrifying than any other saint present. Even the veteran saints who had cultivated for hundreds of years felt insignificant in front of the saint aura that these figures exuded. 16 figures. 15 saints. Powerful saints. Only one youth wasn't a saint. Lin Yi. It's Lin Yi. Lin Yi. Lin Yi. For a moment, countless monstrous experts from the Heavenly Sun Empire exclaimed in shock when they saw the people who had appeared in the void. They didn't expect to be able to come out after the exit had closed. More importantly, they didn't expect that all the members of Lin Ye's team had become saints. When they were in the Great Xiao World ruins, their memories of Lin Yi and the god-battling team had been erased. Naturally, they didn't know that Xue Feng, Lai Tenyu, and the others had become saints. Moreover, Lai Tenyu and the others had only become saints in the past 10 days. Except for Lin Yi, they've all become saints. What a terrifying saint aura. It's too shocking. How do they do it? This aura is even more powerful than the veteran saints. His team members have all become saints except for Lin Yi. It's funny. Haha. Looking at the lineup in the void, everyone was stunned. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it was true. The monstrous geniuses and saints from the Heavenly Jin Empire had ugly expressions. On the other hand, the 8 foreign races didn't have much of a reaction. Lord Cloud Saint's face was filled with excitement. Didn't you want to try? In the void, Lin Yi, the members of the god-battling team, and Nangong Xie walked down step by step. They walked in the void as if they were walking on flat ground. Chapter 366. Soon, Lin Yi and the rest appeared on the side of the Tianyang Empire. Lin Yi stood in the air, while Lai Tenyu and the rest stood behind him. However, no one paid any attention to this scene, because all the experts' eyes and attention were on Lai Tenyu and the rest. They wanted to know how they all became saints. After all, there were more than a dozen saints. Each of them was stronger than anyone else present. More importantly, there were 16 of them, and 15 of them were saints. Are you deaf? The third Prince Sun Wuyu said as he looked coldly at Chen Xuanyi, who didn't know how to be arrogant. But one needed strength to be arrogant. They all came from the Great Xiao world and became saints there. It was impossible for Chen Xuanyi to be arrogant in front of the Tianyang Empire. More than that, Sun Wuyu wanted to test his own strength. You want to fight with me? Chen Xuani's eyes were cold. He was the top genius of the Tianyang Empire. After becoming a saint, he didn't even take Lord Yun Sheng seriously, let alone a newly advanced saint like him. He was invincible in the same realm. Absolutely invincible. Even if the other party was a saint. Fight! Are you worthy? Sun Wuyu said indifferently. Fight with him? What a joke. Wasn't that flattering himself? As he spoke, an unparalleled saint aura burst out as he pressed his palm across the air. His entire movement was like flowing water, clean and neat, but the power was extremely terrifying. The space cracked as a strong wind raged. The earth trembled continuously. When a saint attacked, it was no joke to destroy the world. A newly advanced saint has the strength of a mid-stage saint. No, an ordinary mid-stage saint expert might not be so terrifying. He is indeed a genius. After becoming a saint, he soared to the sky. Ordinary saints can't be compared to him. His saint aura alone is enough to sweep through everything. Seeing Sun Wuyu's strength, the saints and geniuses present were all shocked. The monstrous experts and saints of the Heavenly Gene Empire all had ugly expressions on their faces. Chen Xuani looked solemn. At this moment, he understood a problem. He'd underestimated this new saint who stood before him. This new saint wasn't inferior to him at all, and he might even be slightly stronger. But so what? His strength was not simple either, using powerful means to directly kill the opponent. Annihilation, sword light. Sun Wuyu said. The space that was crushed by Chen Xuani suddenly turned into an unparalleled sword aura. Tens of thousands of sword auras covered the sky and covered the earth as they rushed towards Chen Xuani. At this moment, heaven and earth collapsed. Chen Xuani was completely submerged by the endless sword radiance. In the sword light, Chen Xuani spat out a mouthful of blood as his body was eerily thrown back, escaping the destruction of the sword light. His face was pale and powerless. His hands trembled nonstop. It was obvious that he was seriously injured. Destroying you is as easy as flipping my hand. Even if you take out a supreme-grade sacred artifact, I'll still make you disappear. If you don't believe me, you can try. If I wasn't in a good mood today, you would be dead by now. Sun Wuyu's expression was calm. He looked at Chen Xuani coldly and said, the move just now was one of his innate talents. After becoming a saint, he obtained this inheritance, which made his strength almost invincible among his peers. Not only him, but Xue Feng and the others were also the same. Everyone had a way to destroy. Humph! Chen Xuani just snorted coldly and didn't dare to speak. He felt extremely aggrieved in his heart. He was the top genius of the Tianjin Empire, and he was supposed to be famous after becoming a saint. He didn't expect that he would be crushed by a genius of the same level. In other words, if it was a real battle, his opponent could directly kill him. In the future, be careful when you're arrogant. This time, apologize to Lord Cloud Saint, and I'll spare your life. Lin Yi said. His tone was extremely calm, as if he was talking about a very normal thing. He was just a half-saint. Yet, he dared to talk to a saint like this, which was extremely shocking. What if I don't? Chen Xuani was extremely sullen. It was impossible for him to apologize to Lord Cloud Saint. If he apologized, he wouldn't have the face to continue living in the Tianjin Empire. Moreover, a fifth-level half-saint wanted him to apologize. Wasn't this provoking and humiliating him? Do you want to know? A faint smile appeared on Lin Ye's face. He didn't say anything threatening, but if he didn't do as he said, no one would know in advance what would happen. No, but you want me to apologize to Cloud Saint? Who do you think you are? Chen Xuani said calmly, his eyes bursting with killing intent. If they were alone, he would definitely kill Lin Yi. It's annoying to see. Lin Yi glanced at Chen Xuani indifferently. His eyes were extremely calm, as if he was looking at a dead person. After speaking, he turned and walked toward Lord Cloud Saint. The moment he turned around, Sun Wuyu attacked. His figure flashed strangely, and an unparalleled sword realm crushed toward Chen Xuani. At the same time, a silver-white long sword appeared in his hand. The long sword pierced through space. The long sword pierced through space and slashed toward Chinchwani. Rumble, crack, in the air, there was an explosion, followed by a crisp sound. Then the world quieted down. Sun Wuyu returned to where he was standing previously. His expression was calm, and he had already put away the silver-white long sword. At this moment, hundreds of demon experts and saints were all stunned. Their expressions kept changing, and they couldn't believe that what they had seen was real. Puffed. Chinchwani spat out a mouthful of blood. After spitting out this mouthful of blood, he lost all signs of life. A newly ascended saint, a peerless demon. He didn't die in the great Xiao world ruins, but he was killed in one move as soon as he came out. He didn't even have the power to fight back. Was this still the most powerful demon in the Tianjin Empire? Yes, he was the most powerful demon in the Tianjin Empire. However, he met Sun Wuyu. Sun Wuyu had received the inheritance of the great Xiao world and was the new lord of the great Xiao world. You killed him. Saint Yunyuan and the others had an extremely ugly look on their faces. In front of them, they watched the demon expert from the Tianyang Empire kill the most powerful demon expert in the Tianjin Empire. Not long ago, they were still showing off because the Heavenly Jin Empire had more monstrous experts than the Heavenly Sun Empire. Moreover, there were 3 monstrous experts who had become saints. But now, more than a dozen monstrous experts had emerged from the Heavenly Sun Empire. Aside from Lin Yi, all of them had become saints. Moreover, the demon expert from the Tianjin Empire was killed by the demon expert from the Tianyang Empire. That's right, I killed him. Sun Wuyu replied indifferently. Killing was killing. So what if it was the Tianjin Empire? In this world, the strong were respected, and the bigger fist was the law. Chapter 367. Greetings, Lord Cloud Saint. Lin Yi walked in front of Lord Cloud Saint and bowed. His strength was terrifying, but his cultivation was only at the 5th tribulation half-true saint realm. In front of Lord Cloud Saint, he was still a junior. He couldn't be on the same level as Lord Cloud Saint. He was arrogant. He was overbearing. He was strong, but he wouldn't be rude. If people respected him, he would return 10 feet. Just now, he let Sun Wuyu kill the Heavenly Jin Empire's top genius to regain face for Lord Cloud Saint. Good, very good. It's good that you're back. Lord Cloud Saint's face was full of satisfaction. Lin Ye's return was something he was happy about. Not to mention that the team members who followed Lin Yi had all reached the Saint Realm. Moreover, they were the terrifying kind of Saint Realm experts, which made his heart tremble violently. From the respect Sun Wuyu and the others had for Lin Yi, it could be seen that although Lin Yi hadn't reached the Saint Realm, he was able to make all the saints respect him. If he didn't have heaven-defying abilities, no one would respect him. This time, a total of 108 people from the Heavenly Sun Empire returned. It was one less than the Heavenly Jin Empire. However, the Heavenly Sun Empire had 14 saints. 14 very powerful saints, so powerful that they could kill the Heavenly Jin Empire's top genius in a second. After Lin Yi greeted Lord Cloud Saint, Xuefeng and the others also nodded to Lord Cloud Saint as a greeting. They were already saints, the terrifying kind of saints. Naturally, they couldn't bow to Lord Cloud Saint. Taking the initiative to greet Lord Cloud Saint was also because of Lin Ye's face. Sir Cloud Saint had also sensed this. The more it was like this, the more curious he was. He didn't know how powerful Lin Yi was and what charm he had. Cloud Saint, farewell. The saints of the 8 races said to Lord Cloud Saint with a smile. As they spoke, they looked at Nangong Siye, because Nangong Siye was a member of the 8 races, and she was the only peerless genius of the 8 races who became a Saint Realm expert in the Grand Xiao World ruins. But now, they saw Nangong Siye with Lin Yi. They didn't know what to do. Elder Xinyu, I still have some things to take care of. You guys can go back first. Nangong Siye looked at one of the saints of the 8 foreign races and spoke. She was related to the Profound Z clan. She had entered the Grand Xiao World ruins because she had taken up a spot from the Profound Z clan. However, the members of the Profound Z clan all knew her identity. Now that he had left the Great Xiao World ruins, he naturally had to return to the Nangong family. Go ahead then. Elder Xinyu nodded. He couldn't force Nangong Xie to follow him to the profound Z clan. After he finished speaking, he left with the powerhouses of the 8 foreign races. In the blink of an eye, the group of powerhouses disappeared into the horizon. Let's go back to Lord Yun Sheng said to the other saints of the Heavenly Sun Empire. No one had any objections. Immediately, many figures flew into the distance. Edge of the sea, only the experts of the Tianjin Empire were left behind. Every one of them had fear and shock on their faces. The dignified top genius of the Tianjin Empire had been killed in one move by the new saint of the Tianjin Empire. From the looks of it, the new saints of the Tianjin Empire were not simple. The experts of the Tianjin Empire were all curious about what had happened in the Great Xiao world for the Tianyang Empire to gain so much. For a moment, the saints of the Tianjin Empire all looked at the monstrous experts who had entered the Great Xiao world relic. What happened in there? How did the people of the Heavenly Sun Empire become so powerful? Saint Yun Yuan's expression was extremely solemn. He wasn't afraid of the dozen or so new saints of the Heavenly Sun Empire, but he was worried that the geniuses of the Heavenly Sun Empire had obtained some heaven-defying resources and secrets in the Grand Xiao World ruins. This concerned the future of the Tianjin Empire. I'm not sure. I didn't know that they were saints. It was as if they had become saints recently. I have a question. I feel that something is missing from my memory. What? You have the same feeling too? Yes, I have the same feeling, but I don't know what memory is missing. I'm sure that I'm missing a part of my memory, a very important part. The geniuses of the Tianjin Empire who had entered the Grand Xiao World ruins. Saint Yin Yuan voiced his doubts. They were peerless geniuses. Although a part of their memory had been erased and they couldn't recall it, they could feel that they had lost their memory, but they couldn't be sure. However, as soon as someone said it, the others realized the problem. What? Could it be that a part of all of your memories has been erased? There must have been a shocking change in the Grand Xiao World ruins. Someone didn't want everything that happened in the Grand Xiao World ruins to be leaked, so they used a shocking method to erase a part of the important memories. Saint Yun Yuan and the other saints. Their expressions were extremely ugly. Hearing the words of the geniuses on their side, they were already certain that a part of the memories of the geniuses who had left the Grand Xiao World ruins had been erased without anyone knowing. Moreover, everyone's memories were the same. In other words, a heaven-defying person had erased a part of the memories of all humans in the Grand Xiao World ruins at the same time. Do you know about the World Heaven Leaderboard? Saint Shuai Ling asked. He had been to the Grand Xiao World ruins and knew some things inside. Yes. But we don't know who is in the top 20 of the World Heaven Leaderboard. In my memory, I don't remember the information of the top 20 of the World Heaven Leaderboard. Could it be that Lin Yi and the others are all in the top 20 of the World Heaven Leaderboard? Or rather, the erased memories of the Grand Xiao World ruins have something to do with them? The top 20 of the World Heaven Leaderboard are all mysterious people with no names or results. It's scary just thinking about it. The geniuses of the Tianjin Empire who had come out of the Grand Xiao World ruins had ugly expressions. Originally, the Grand Xiao World ruins was a place to adventure and gain experience and obtain terrifying resources. Now that he thought about it, he felt extremely terrified. He finally understood that everything about him was under the control of others. Moreover, this might be related to Lin Yi and the others. As expected, something shocking happened in the Grand Xiao World ruins. Remember, don't say things that you shouldn't say. There are some things that you and I can't guess. You know how terrifying the other party is to be able to erase all of your memories without anyone knowing. Saint Yun Yuan's expression kept changing. He really wanted to know what happened in the Grand Xiao World ruins. But when he thought of some terrifying speculations, he no longer dared to have such curiosity. He was a great sage. The more he saw, the more he knew. This way, he would know even more terrifying things. There were many things that he couldn't guess or touch. Otherwise, they would vanish into thin air. Chapter 368. Within a day, Lin Yi and the rest returned to the imperial city of the Tianyang Empire. As soon as Lin Yi returned to the imperial city, he was brought to the imperial palace by Lord Yun Sheng. He said that the great emperor wanted to see him. He did not refuse and followed Lord Yun Sheng to the imperial palace. Sun Wuyu, Nan Gongxia, and the rest settled down in the imperial city and waited for Lin Yi to come out of the imperial palace. It was Lin Yi's first time in the imperial palace. Along the way, Lord Yun Sheng did not speak. Lin Yi did not speak either. Soon, the two of them arrived at the imperial palace. In the imperial palace, a middle-aged man sat on the main seat. The middle-aged man leaned against the throne with a calm expression on his face, but he gave off an invisible pressure. This was the power of a superior, a power that looked down on everything. He was the current great emperor of the Tianyang Empire, one of the supreme figures who controlled the Tianmu region. The great emperor, Shun Yunlian. Ever since he ascended the throne as the great emperor, no one called him by his name. Gradually, he replaced the two words great emperor. All the people and experts called him the great emperor. Looking at Shun Yunlian, Lin Yi looked calm and relaxed. Step by step, he walked towards the center of the imperial palace. Facing the great emperor of the Tianyang Empire, he did not feel any pressure or nervousness. In the face of the unparalleled power, he could not be shaken at all. This was because he also had the power of a superior. Moreover, he had the fate of the lord of the Xia kingdom. He was the new lord of the Xia kingdom. In terms of status, the great emperor of the Tianyang Empire and the lord of the Xia kingdom were worlds apart. Therefore, Lin Yi was not afraid in front of the great emperor of the Tianyang Empire, Shun Yunlian. On the contrary, at this moment, it was as if he was the real great emperor. This power made Lord Yun Sheng and the great emperor shocked and curious. Lin Yi pays his respects to the great emperor. Lin Yi walked to the center of the imperial palace and stopped. He bowed to the great emperor, Shun Yunlian. He was the lord of the Xia kingdom. However, he was now a half-saint. In front of the great emperor of the saint realm, he naturally had to bow. No need for formalities. Have a seat. With a smile on his face, Shun Yunlian gestured for him to dispense with the formalities. He stretched out his hand and pointed at the first seat in the palace for Lin Yi to sit. "Thank you, Your Majesty." He bent over slightly and walked toward his seat. He didn't hold back at all. He didn't like to be overly courteous. In his opinion, respect was enough. There was no need to care about so much hypocritical etiquette. Of course, he wouldn't skimp on the necessary etiquette. Before you enter the ruins, this saint has already decided. If you can come back alive from the world ruins of the Grand Xia, I will betroth the little princess to you. You didn't disappoint me. You even exceeded my expectations. Shun Yunlian went straight to the point. He didn't beat around the bush at all. A great emperor was a great emperor. Everything was done so cleanly and neatly, catching people off guard. Even Grand Tutor Yun Sheng, who had been grooming the great emperor for a long time, almost stumbled. He did not expect the great emperor to be so direct and speak about this matter as soon as he arrived. Lin Yi, who was sitting in his seat, had a poker face, but Shun Yunlian's words almost made him spit out the tea in his mouth. "Your Majesty, you..." Lin Yi swallowed the tea in his mouth. He raised his head and looked at Shun Yunlian, observing him with his eyes. He wanted to know if the great emperor was telling the truth or was just joking to lighten the mood. However, he really didn't see the great emperor as joking. For a moment, his mind couldn't wrap itself around it. You didn't hear wrongly. There's nothing in the heavenly purity territory that's worth your stay. Go to the Tianlan true domain. My little princess is there too. The great emperor, Shun Yunlian, smiled. He looked at Lin Yi with more and more satisfaction. "Your Majesty, this is a little inappropriate." Lin Yi was curious about the Tianlan true domain. He also knew that the great emperor was right. There was nothing in the heavenly purity territory that was worth his stay. Only a bigger stage could allow him to grow faster. However, he still couldn't accept the fact that the great emperor betrothed the little princess to him. He couldn't even understand it. He had never seen the little princess before. There's nothing inappropriate. It's decided then. The great emperor shook his head. Naturally, he wouldn't let go of the person he had set his eyes on. Linyi was about to break down. He didn't know why he would encounter such a thing today. The person in front of him was the great emperor of the Tianyang Empire, one of the two rulers of the heavenly purity territory. This is a portrait of the little princess. Lord Yunsheng took a scroll from the great emperor. Then he came to Linyi. He gently unrolled the scroll. A beautiful girl appeared on the scroll. The girl was about 14 or 15 years old. She looked like a fairy from the legends. She didn't look like a human being at all. The little princess should look like an imperial concubine. When Linyi saw the beautiful girl in the scroll, he couldn't help but be shocked. This girl was too beautiful. Among the girls he knew, this girl was almost the same as Nan Gongxie, Biluo, and the Silent Soul. Moreover, her pure and sweet temperament was unique. He looked at the girl in the scroll. Linyi couldn't help but look at the great emperor. He opened his mouth and said something that almost made the great emperor spit out blood. Lord Yunsheng's face was extremely ugly. Didn't he say that the great emperor wasn't good-looking? Get lost. Don't let me see you again. The great emperor glared at Lin Yi fiercely and said. He almost went berserk. The expression on his face was as ugly as it could get. Lin Yi, goodbye. Lin Yi stood up and walked out of the palace. He felt like he was running away from a debt. He couldn't wait to leave this place. He wasn't afraid that the great emperor would kill him because the great emperor wouldn't do that. Instead, it was because the great emperor had betrothed the little princess to him. Lin Yi, wait. Just as Lin Yi was about to leave the palace, Lord Yunsheng's voice sounded behind him. Hearing this voice, Lin Yi could only stop. Lord Yunsheng, what can I do for you? When Lord Yunsheng came over, Lin Yi asked, This is for you from the great emperor. Tianyang Empire's Shun family's signature martial art, infinite four symbols. I can tell you what you want to know. Lord Yunsheng handed a jade box that was 1 foot in length, width, and height to Lin Yi and said, There are simple sealing runes on the jade box, and Lin Yi had to open it personally. Infinite four symbols? Lin Yi looked at the jade box that Lord Yunsheng handed over. His face was filled with confusion. Infinite four symbols is the only peerless sage martial art in heavenly purification territory. It is also one of the 9 great sage martial arts in Divine Land. Lord Yunsheng said. When he looked at the jade box, his eyes were filled with passion. This was one of the 9 great saint-level cultivation methods of the Divine Land. Even if the infinite four symbols was extremely difficult to cultivate and there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance of entering the door, if one succeeded, the power would be terrifying and invincible among those of the same level. However, it was left behind by the ancestors of the Shun family. Chapter 369. I don't deserve it. Lin Yi can't accept it. Lin Yi was shocked when he heard Lord Yunsheng's words. It was one of the Divine Land's 9 great sage rank cultivation techniques. Although he didn't know how powerful the cultivation technique was, its origin was enough to prove its importance. Moreover, it was an absolute sage rank cultivation technique, which was much more powerful than the cultivation techniques that he was currently cultivating. Although the cultivation technique was good, he couldn't accept it. You're wrong. You have 3 reasons to get the 4 elements infinite. Firstly, you're from the Tianyang Empire. Secondly, you'll be representing the experts of the Tianyang Empire to the Tianlan True region. Thirdly, you're the husband of the little princess. Lord Yunsheng said seriously. He couldn't help but laugh. This was because he realized that both the great emperor and this little guy were hilarious. Their appearances weren't the type that countless girls would fall for, but they were both peerless and heaven-defying. I can accept the first 2 reasons, but the second one is too ridiculous. Lin Yi shook his head. He could accept the rest, but he couldn't understand the marriage between the great emperor and the great emperor. Can't you be more flexible? The little princess doesn't know you. You don't know the little princess either. You two might not be fated. Now that you've accepted the marriage between the great emperor and the great emperor, who knows what the future will be like? However, this is one of the great sage rank cultivation techniques in the Divine Land. Even if you can't cultivate the cultivation technique, There are destructive martial techniques inside. Lord Yunsheng smiled. As he spoke, he passed the jade box to Lin Yi. By the time Lin Yi reacted, the jade box was already in his hand. He couldn't help but shake his head. What's going on? Lord Yunsheng, the Great Emperor wants me to go to the Tianlan True region. What's the matter? Don't tell me he's going to look for the little princess. Lin Yi asked as he looked at Lord Yunsheng. He already knew Lord Yunsheng's identity in the Tianyang Empire. He was the Great Emperor's teacher. Now that the Great Emperor was in charge of the Tianyang Empire, he was the Grand Tutor. His position was extremely respected. Most of the things that he said represented the Great Emperor. Tianlan True Region. It's one of the 4 great regions of the Divine Land. Compared to Heavenly Purification Domain, it's much more than 1,000 times. It's a paradise for the strong, a hell for the weak's hell. You'll know it when you get there. Every year, one person from the Tianyang Empire is sent to the true heavenly domain. Lord Yunsheng, the Tianyang was the true region's true region. However, the Heavenly Sun Empire was too far away from the Heavenly Wave true domain. Even for a colossus like the Heavenly Sun Empire, it would require a terrifying amount of resources to teleport someone to the Heavenly Wave true domain. The amount of resources needed was even more than the amount needed to open the Grand Xia World ruins. The main reason was that when passing through the boundless sea and storms, the teleporter had a slim chance of surviving. TSS, when will the teleportation begin? Lin Yi had a strong sense of curiosity and yearning for the true heavenly domain. Only the stronger the place, the faster he could grow. There's a total of 5 people this time. Dishir Xiao, Morong Nan, Tian Yi, Shunyu. It's 3 months from today, Lord Yunsheng said. The 4 of them were the Tianyang Empire's top monstrous experts. The forces behind them affected the Tianyang Empire. Naturally, the Tianyang Empire had to take care of the 4 clans and sections. Lin Yi was the only one who didn't have a strong background. However, his talent and strength were the most terrifying. The Great Emperor had high hopes for Lin Yi. There's no restriction during this period, right? Lin Yi asked. 3 months was more than enough. He still had some unfinished business in Heavenly Purification Domain. If he left Heavenly Purification Domain for Tianlan True Region, he didn't know when he would return. He might not even return to Heavenly Purification Domain. Therefore, he had to settle things here. No, the Great Emperor doesn't want to see you. Come to the Imperial Palace to find me if you need anything. Go. Lord Yunsheng finished. He waved his hand to signal Lin Yi to leave. Lin Yi, I'll take my leave. Lin Yi bowed slightly and walked out of the Imperial Palace. He left the Imperial Palace. He walked straight out of Sky City. There were still 3 months. He had to rush back within 3 months. Otherwise, he would miss the opportunity to head to Tianlan True Region. He still had some regrets because he couldn't return to the Sky Sea Realm. The Sky Sea Realm's matter hadn't been settled. However, it made sense. He hadn't reached the 5th transformation of the 9 divine dragon transformations, and the incomplete rune pattern hadn't been repaired. It wouldn't help if he rushed back. He could only wait until he reached the 5 divine dragon transformations and repair the incomplete rune pattern before finding an opportunity to return to the Sky Sea Realm. Captain! Just as he left Sky City, Lin Yi heard 2 familiar voices. He turned around and saw Lai Tenyu, 3rd Prince Sun Wuyu, and Nangong Siya. The 3 of them were walking towards him. You guys are returning to the kingdom, too? Lin Yi looked at Lai Tenyu and Sun Wuyu and asked, Let's go back and take a look. We found out from Shunyu that Captain is heading to Tianlan True Region. Sun Wuyu said. Shunyu is Shun Yulian's son and the elder brother of the little princess, Shun Qingqing. Although Shunyu didn't have any relationship with Sun Wuyu and the others, Shunyu was a person of high status. Being in the Imperial Palace, he was the best at roping people in. Naturally, Shunyu got along with Sun Wuyu and the others. After all, Sun Wuyu and the others were terrifying saints. Sun Wuyu found out from Shunyu that Lin Yi was heading to Tianlan True Region. They also planned to follow Lin Yi. It was just that their way of going was different. You guys are going too? Lin Yi asked. There were only 5 spots to go to Tianlan True Region. Yes, we have a way to go. Lai Tenyu revealed a mysterious smile. Where's senior sister? She's afraid that I'll run away. Lin Yi smiled and looked at Nangong Siye. All this time, he did not agree to let Nangong Siye go to the Nangong family, nor did he refuse. Now that he left Sky City and Nangong Siye followed him, the meaning was clear. Is this how you see your senior sister in your heart? I'm here to tell you, you don't have to go to the Nangong family. Nangong Siye's absolutely beautiful face revealed an unhappy expression. She looked like she was angry, but this look made one's heart beat faster and almost break down. A smile from a beauty could topple a city. Similarly, a beauty was unparalleled when she was angry. Oh, is that so? Won't the Nangong family blame you, senior sister? Lin Yi was stunned. He did not expect Nangong Siye to not ask him to go to the Nangong family, but to not ask him to go to the Nangong family. This was indeed beyond his expectations, but he did not know why. Chapter 370. Although I'm a member of the Nangong family can't control me. Besides, not bringing you to the Nangong family is also for the Nangong family. Junior brother, don't you think so? The coldness on Nangong Siye's beautiful face melted. There were some things she couldn't tell Lin Yi. Also, she didn't want to fall out with Lin Yi. She didn't want to stand against Lin Yi for the sake of the Nangong family. Moreover, she had a feeling that although the Nangong family was terrifying and powerful, they couldn't do anything to Lin Yi. He had discovered this feeling when he was away from the Great Xiao World ruins. The Nangong family is a third-grade superfamily. Junior brother, I'm just a half-step saint. Senior sister thinks too highly of me. Of course, senior sister knows my character. I won't cause trouble or be afraid of trouble. Lin Yi said with a smile on his face. The Nangong family was indeed powerful, a third-grade superfamily. It was even stronger than the Tian family of the Tianyang Empire. It was best not to offend them. Of course, if the Nangong family came looking for trouble with him, he wouldn't shrink back. Go and come back early. Hearing Lin Yi's words, Nangong Siye felt that Lin Yi was deliberately distancing himself from her. This made her a little puzzled. After speaking, she turned around and walked toward the Sky City. Let's go too. Watching Nangong Siye leave, Lin Yi said to Lai Tenyu and Sun Wuyu. His figure flashed and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in the sky. His speed was extremely fast, not far from Saint's teleportation. Sun Wuyu and Lai Tenyu looked at each other. They also flashed and chased after him. Both of them were saints with terrifying strength. Their speed wasn't any slower than Lin Yi's. Time passed day by day. Lin Yi and the other two used the teleportation formation to fly at full speed. Finally, after a month, the three appeared in the territory of the Cloud Sky Kingdom. As long as they entered the Cloud Sky Kingdom, they would be able to use the teleportation formation in the kingdom's capital. It wouldn't take long. Let's part ways here. I'll return after I've settled everything, Lin Yi said as he stood in the air. He would not go to the royal city. Instead, he went straight to the Saint Spirit Heavenly Sect and picked up Luo Bingyue and the others. Of course, the Saint Spirit Heavenly Sect was his benefactor, so he had to make proper arrangements for them. Captain, take care. We'll wait for you in King City. Sun Wuyu nodded. Monarch City was his home. Returning to Monarch City was like returning to his own territory, even if he wasn't the king of the Cloudy Sky Kingdom. It's settled then. Lin Yi pondered for a moment and nodded in agreement. In any case, the Shengling Heaven Sect belonged to the Cloud Sky Kingdom. The distance from the Shengling Heaven Sect to the royal city wasn't far, so it wasn't a waste of time. After saying that, he took a step forward. With this step, he was already 10 miles away. When he took the second step, he was already in the sky. In a few breaths' time, Lin Yi's figure disappeared from their sight. 3 years ago, the Cloudy Sky Kingdom was a colossus to him. 3 years later, the Cloudy Sky Kingdom was no longer as majestic to him. The Shengling Heaven Sect was a 5th-rank sect. It was the most powerful sect within hundreds of thousands of miles. In the entire Cloudy Sky Kingdom, the Shengling Heaven Sect could be considered a powerful existence. However, 100,000 miles away from the Shengling Heaven Sect, there was a powerful sect called the Taiyu Sect. It was also a fifth-rank sect and was slightly stronger than the Shengling Heaven Sect. A mountain couldn't hold two tigers. The two fifth-rank sects weren't together. However, they weren't far apart. Often, the two sects competed and suppressed each other. Their disciples often fought. However, it was rare for them to fight. After all, if the two sects really fought, it wouldn't be good for either side. They didn't want to do something that would hurt both sides. However, a year ago, after the daughter of the Taiyu sect's leader, Zhong Qingning, became the crown princess of the Cloudy Sky Kingdom's first prince, the Taiyu sect gained a powerful backer. With the support of the first prince, many other sects gradually got closer to the Taiyu sect. Since then, the Shengling Heaven Sect had been suppressed even more. Unfortunately, the Taiyu sect was stronger than the Shengling Heaven Sect. Moreover, there were other sects with the Taiyu sect. The Shengling Heaven Sect didn't dare to offend the first prince, because the first prince was one of the best candidates for the throne of the Cloudy Sky Kingdom. Most of the forces in the Cloudy Sky Kingdom stood on the first prince's side. Offending the first prince was equivalent to offending the entire Cloudy Sky Kingdom. On this day, in the Shengling Heaven Sect, Holy Spirit Hall, the sect leader, Dongwu Shuejian, and more than a dozen elders and peak masters were gathered in the hall, waiting. Everyone's expression was extremely solemn. However, no one spoke. Dongwu Shuejian, 5 days have passed. Have you considered it? A loud and arrogant voice rang out in the Holy Spirit Palace. At the same time, more than a dozen powerful auras rolled over. Every aura had the power of a ninth tribulation half-true saint. They were only one step away from the saint realm. Brother Zhong, your suggestion lacks sincerity. As a person, why not leave a way out? In the hall, Dongwu Shuejian's expression was cold. However, he was about to go berserk. The other peak masters and elders' expressions were also extremely ugly. However, for the Shengling Heaven Sect, they could only endure. They could only greet them with a smile. Sincerity? Leave a way out. If the Shengling Heaven Sect merges with the Supreme Yu Sect, you will be the Supreme Yu Sect's elders. If the Shengling Heaven Sect doesn't merge with the Supreme Yu Sect, there is no need for the Shengling Heaven Sect to exist. I gave you 5 days to consider. Now that 5 days have passed, this is already the greatest sincerity. A loud and aggressive voice sounded, accompanied by a powerful aura. Soon, 18 experts appeared in the Holy Spirit Hall. These people were all peak, 9 tribulation half-true saints. They were only a step away from the saint realm. The leader was an old man wearing the Supreme Yu Sect's uniform. Beside him were 2 guards from the Cloud Sky Kingdom, as well as an expert from the Blood Spirit Church and the Moon-worshipping Gate. Behind them were all experts from the Supreme Yu Sect. The one who spoke was the Supreme Yu sect leader, Zhong Wushu. Peak 9th tribulation, half-true saints were existences that had the highest chance of becoming saints. The Shengling Heaven Sect is still a 5th-grade sect. Our ancestors worked hard to pass down their ancestral land. Since you can merge with the Supreme Yu Sect so easily, the Supreme Yu Sect is only a 5th-grade sect. If the Supreme Yu Sect really wants to take over the Shengling Heaven Sect, the Shengling Heaven Sect isn't someone to be trifled with. The Heavenly Radiance Peak Master stared coldly at Zhong Wushu and the others. The Shengling Heaven Sect and the Supreme Yu Sect were both 5th-grade forces. Naturally, the Shengling Heaven Sect wouldn't agree to annex the Shengling Heaven Sect. Even if they wanted to merge, only a 4th or 3rd-grade force was qualified to do so. As the Heavenly Radiance Peak Master, he was the first to stand out and object. Who do you think you are? If you want to wipe out the Shengling Heaven Sect, the first prince can do it with a single word. We are here on the first prince's orders to supervise the merger between the Supreme Yu Sect and the Shengling Heaven Sect. Anyone who violates his orders will be killed without mercy. One of the 2 guards from the Cloud Sky Kingdom spoke. Chapter 371. Boom. The Cloudy Sky Kingdom's guard suddenly attacked, and a destructive force shot towards the heavenly radiant peak master. As a ninth tribulation half-true saint, the heavenly radiant peak master's strength was unparalleled. His reaction was quick, and he punched out. Two destructive attacks collided. The space in the hall distorted. Pucci, the heavenly radiant peak master's body trembled as if he had suffered a heavy blow. He spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was like a kite with a broken string, and he was sent flying backwards before landing heavily on the ground. A peak ninth tribulation half-true saint was defeated by an expert of the same realm. The atmosphere in the hall was extremely strange. The other peak masters and elders of the Shengling heavenly sect all wore ugly expressions. They all activated their cultivation techniques, ready to fight at any moment. In the Shengling heavenly sect, it was a humiliation for the Shengling heavenly sect to have a peak master injured by an outsider. Sir, the Saint Spirit heavenly sect is a 5th grade sect. The first prince is just the first prince. He's not the king. Even the king wouldn't wipe out a 5th grade sect for no reason. Does the first prince represent the Cloudy Sky Kingdom? Is he above the Cloudy Sky Kingdom? According to the Empire's laws, the kingdom cannot interfere with the matters of sex and families. Dong Wushuejian's face was gloomy. Although the Saint Spirit heavenly sect couldn't be compared to the kingdom, it wasn't an existence that could be wiped out by the kingdom. Moreover, the Empire's laws stated that the kingdom couldn't interfere with the matters of sex and families. Now that the first prince had openly supported the Supreme Yu sect, he had violated the Empire's laws. At this moment, the Saint Spirit heavenly sect had completely fallen out with the first prince and the Supreme Yu sect. Their only hope was that the Empire's laws would restrict the first prince from interfering with the matters of the Supreme Yu sect and the Saint Spirit heavenly sect. Laws? Trying to use the law to suppress the first prince? What is the Saint Spirit heavenly sect in the eyes of the Empire? Even if the Empire finds out, they can only turn a blind eye. Moreover, if we wipe out the Saint Spirit heavenly sect, who will say that we have violated the Empire's laws? Let me tell you something. 10 days later, the first prince will ascend the throne and inherit the Cloudy Sky Kingdom. The Supreme Yu sect's Zhong Wushu had a smug smile on his face. The Empire did have such a law, but if the Shengling heavenly sect was wiped out, the Empire could only turn a blind eye to it. Moreover, would the Shengling heavenly sect think that the first prince had broken the law? The Shengling heavenly sect did not have the final say. The Empire was more willing to believe in the first prince. This was a world where the strong reigned supreme. The bigger one's fist was the law. The Shengling heavenly sect is indeed nothing in the eyes of the Empire. However, there is one person in the Shengling heavenly sect who can wipe out the Cloud Sky Kingdom with a single word. The Cloud Sky Kingdom is nothing in the eyes of the Empire. Moreover, the first prince wants to inherit the throne? Dream on. Within the hall, the expressions of Donghua Shiujian and the others were extremely unsightly, because what Zhong Wushu said was reasonable. When the Shengling heavenly sect complained to the Empire naturally sided with the kingdom. Without powerful strength, even if it was reasonable, there was no way to argue. Unless there were powerful figures or forces in the Empire supporting the Shengling heavenly sect. Obviously, that was impossible. For a moment, everyone felt extremely uncomfortable. The Shengling heavenly sect could only blame themselves for not being as strong as the first prince. At this moment, a calm voice sounded from outside the hall. His voice was as light as the wind. However, it gave off an invisible pressure that made it hard for people to stand up. Squeak! The faint sound of footsteps could be heard clearly. Every step he took gave the people in the hall an even greater pressure. Instantly, the people of the Shengling heavenly sect were curious. The Cloud Sky Kingdom's guards and the Supreme Yu sect's people had a solemn expression because the words outside were obviously from the Shengling heavenly sect side. They couldn't think of anyone from the Shengling heavenly sect that could give them such pressure. Finally, a figure appeared at the entrance of the hall. It was a young man. He was in his early 20s. He wore a green robe, and had an ordinary appearance. He had a scholarly aura around him, just like a scholar. However, this ordinary-looking young man didn't feel the slightest bit of pressure from the dozens of peak Ninth Tribulation half-true saints in the hall. He casually strode into the main hall. The young man didn't stop. Instead, he walked towards the center of the hall. "Who are you? Aren't your words a little too arrogant? Does the first prince need your permission to ascend the throne? Are you kidding me? I like to ask, who is capable of wiping out the Cloud Sky Kingdom with a single word?" One of the two guards of the Cloud Sky Kingdom, Xiao Yunting. His expression became ugly. He sized up the young man in front of him. He wasn't the only one. Everyone present was sizing up the young man. No matter how strong the Shengling heavenly sect was, it was only a fifth-grade sect. In the Cloud Sky Kingdom, it could only be considered above average. Who in the sect could wipe out the Cloud Sky Kingdom's people with a single word? What a joke. Who do you think you are? Do I have to tell you just because I want to know? Under the pressure of the Ninth Tribulation half-true saints, the young man casually walked to the center of the hall. He looked coldly at Xiao Yunting and said indifferently, "Courting death." Xiao Yunting's expression was ugly to the extreme. As the guard of the Cloud Sky Kingdom's first prince, he had come to a sect under the kingdom. With the first prince's support, he didn't put anyone in his eyes. Who would have thought that he would be insulted by a young man in the Shengling heavenly sect? He saw clearly. This young man was a Fifth Tribulation half-true saint. He could crush a mere Fifth Tribulation half-true saint to death with a single hand. With a single punch, he punched towards the young man. Previously, he had injured the Heavenly Radiance Peak Master with a single punch. Now that he was dealing with a Fifth Tribulation half-true saint, the young man would die without a doubt. Ignorant, the young man raised his hand and punched out lightly. Boom! With a loud explosion, a burst of light exploded in the hall. Space shattered inch by inch. Xiao Yunting screamed miserably. Xiao Yunting's arm was directly crushed by the young man's attack. That terrifying attack continued to press forward. His entire arm was smashed into nothingness. In an instant, Xiao Yunting's entire body was smashed into nothingness. It was as if Xiao Yunting had disappeared into thin air. In other words, it was as if he had never appeared in the hall. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. A Fifth Tribulation half-true saint had smashed a peak Ninth Tribulation half-true saint into nothingness with a single punch. How powerful was that attack? It was simply unimaginable. Even a true saint could easily kill a half-true saint. But smashing a half-true saint into nothingness was an impossible feat, but in front of them, a Fifth Tribulation half-true saint had smashed a Ninth Tribulation half-true saint into nothingness. Chapter 372. You're making an enemy out of the first prince. Making an enemy out of the Cloud Sky Kingdom? Aren't you going to give us an explanation? In the main hall, it took a long time for everyone to recover from their shock. The Cloud Sky Kingdom's guard, Xiao Yunting, had been killed by a Fifth Tribulation half-true saint with a single punch. How terrifying was this? It was completely beyond the scope of everyone's imagination. The strongest person present was a Ninth Tribulation half-true saint. A Ninth Tribulation half-true saint was already considered a powerful expert in the Cloud Sky Kingdom. However, in front of a Fifth Tribulation half-true saint, a Ninth Tribulation half-true saint was too weak. He had been reduced to dust with a single punch. Do you need an explanation? I've said it before. The first prince is just the first prince. He's not the ruler. Even if he's the ruler, he wouldn't dare to touch me. 3 days later, I'll pay a visit to the Supreme Use sect. The same goes for the Blood Spirit cult and moon-worshipping gate. Scram, the young man said coldly. His tone was casual, but in the ears of the Supreme Use sect's experts, it sounded like an order. The last word, scram, almost shattered their souls. Who are you? The Supreme Use sect's sect master, Zhong Wushu, had an ugly expression on his face. He was extremely cunning and experienced. He had already seen that the young man's background wasn't simple. He wasn't someone the Supreme Use sect could afford to offend. Even the first prince couldn't afford to offend him. This time, The Supreme Yu sect was finished. Looking at the young man, he felt that he was familiar, but he couldn't recall who he was. Lin Yi. Lin Yi said softly. That's right, he was Lin Yi. Lin Yi, who had returned from the Heavenly Sun Empire. He had never imagined that the Saint Spirit Heavenly Sect would fall into such a predicament. If he hadn't returned, the Saint Spirit Heavenly Sect would have been wiped out by the Supreme Yu sect and several other sections. Lin Yi, it's been 3 years. It's really you. Dong Wuxiuejian had recognized Lin Yi long ago. However, he wasn't sure. The young man in front of him was too terrifying and too powerful, so powerful that it was beyond his imagination. In his opinion, even if Lin Yi had gone to the Great Xiao World ruins, it was impossible for him to be so powerful. Therefore, he did not dare to confirm that the young man in front of him was Lin Yi until Lin Yi said his name. Hearing Lin Yi say his name personally, his heart was filled with excitement. You've returned from the Grand Xiao World ruins. It really is Lin Yi. As expected of the #1 genius of our Shengling Heavenly Sect, the elders and peak masters of the Saint Spirit Heavenly Sect were overjoyed. He also thought of the monstrous genius from 3 years ago, who had even killed the first senior brother of the Shengling Heavenly Sect. He was known as the most monstrous genius in the history of the Shengling Heavenly Sect. However, after he went to the Heavenly Sun Empire, there had been no news of him. Gradually, Lin Yi's name faded from the Holy Spirit Heavenly Sect. Lin Yi defeated the #1 genius of the Tian family, Lin Yi, reaching the 5th Tribulation Half-True Saint Realm in 3 years. The Grand Xiao World ruins is indeed mysterious. Does he think that he can go against the Supreme Yu sect just because he reached the 5th Tribulation Half-True Saint Realm? The Blood Spirit cult is not something you can provoke. Do you think the Reverence Moon sect is a pushover? You overestimate yourself. The experts of the Supreme Yu sect, Blood Spirit cult, and Reverence Moon sect looked calm on the surface, but they were shocked in their hearts. They had never thought that this young man would come out from the Grand Xiao World ruins. A few 9 Tribulation Half-True saints might not be his match. However, a 5th-rank sect was not something a mere Lin Yi could shake. You want to stay here? 3 breaths. If you don't leave, all of you will die here. Lin Yi's gaze was incomparably cold. When he swept his gaze across the Supreme Yu sect's experts, they felt as though they had fallen into an ice cellar, and their hearts couldn't help but tremble. His voice was even more frightening. Although Lin Yi was just a 5th Tribulation Half-True saint, he had killed a 9th Tribulation Half-True saint with a single punch. That was fun. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The moment Lin Yi's voice fell, the entire hall fell silent. The experts of the 3 sects were incomparably hesitant. If they left like this, wouldn't they become the laughingstock of the world? However, if they stayed and were killed by Lin Yi, that would be an injustice. For a moment, everyone was incomparably conflicted. However, Lin Yi didn't give them any time to hesitate. 2 breaths of time passed. More than a dozen 9 Tribulation Half-True saints flashed and flew out of the hall like a wisp of smoke. In the blink of an eye, the experts of the Supreme Yu sect, Blood Spirit cult, and Reverence Moon sect disappeared without a trace. They had come quickly and left even faster. In the hall, only the elders and peak masters of the Holy Spirit Heavenly Sect were left. Are you really just a 5th Tribulation Half-True saint? After the Supreme Yu sect's experts left, the entire hall was incomparably quiet, and the atmosphere was stifling. They didn't know what to say. Because Lin Yi was just a disciple of the Holy Spirit Heavenly Sect, they were somewhat unaccustomed to his terrifying strength. After a while, Dong Wuxiuejian broke the stifling atmosphere in the hall. He asked curiously. He wasn't the only one who was curious. The other peak masters and elders were also curious about this matter. They saw that Lin Yi was indeed a 5th Tribulation Half-True saint, but he was able to destroy a 9th Tribulation Half-True saint with a single punch. This wasn't something a half-true saint could do. There was another problem, and that was how many sects Lin Yi had offended. If Lin Yi was really a half-true saint, he wouldn't be a match for the Supreme Yu sect. After all, 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Moreover, there were saints in 5th grade sections. The Holy Spirit Heavenly Sect also had saints, but they had left several decades ago and hadn't returned until now. Otherwise, the Supreme You sect wouldn't have dared to deal with the Holy Spirit Heavenly Sect so recklessly. In 5th Tribulation Half-True Saint. Lin Yi nodded. He was indeed a 5th Tribulation Half-True Saint. In that case, you should return to the Heavenly Sun Empire. With your talent, joining a 3rd grade sect or family won't be a problem. No matter how powerful the Cloud Sky Kingdom and Supreme You sect are, they won't dare to find trouble with you in the Empire. The Supreme You sect, Blood Spirit Cult, and Moon Reverence Gate all have saints. Moreover, the Cloud Sky Kingdom's first prince is the mastermind. There's no need to offend him for now. When Dong Wishuijin heard that Lin Yi was really a 5th Tribulation Half-True Saint, he was happy and worried at the same time. He was happy that Lin Yi could kill a 9th Tribulation Half-True Saint with a 5th Tribulation Half-True Saint, but he was worried that Lin Yi would be targeted by the Supreme You sect. Lin Yi's talent was at the peak even in the Empire. Such a person would definitely be roped in by the super sects and families. His future was limitless. I'll deal with the Supreme You sect, Blood Spirit Cult, and Moon Reverence Gate. I came back this time to deal with some matters. After that, I'll head to the Heavenly Wave True region. Lin Yi said. As for the Supreme You sect, Blood Spirit Cult, and Moon Reverence Gate, he really didn't care. They were merely 5th grade sections. Even if they had saints, he wouldn't be afraid. Not to mention saints, he had even killed existences on the level of the Great Sage. Chapter 373. To the Tianlan True Domain. When Donghua Shuejian and some of the peak masters and elders heard that Lin Yi was going to the sky below True Domain, their expressions changed. Most of them looked worried. That's right. That's what the Great Emperor said. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel angry when he thought of the Great Emperor. Why did the Great Emperor bestow a marriage? However, he had no choice but to agree. The other party was the Great Emperor of the Tianyang Empire. Lin Yi didn't have the strength and qualifications to oppose him. He didn't dare to call him the Great Emperor. With the Great Emperor on his back, he naturally didn't fear him. Lin Yi, don't be rude to the Great Emperor. If anyone hears you, you'll die without a burial place. The Celestial Light Peak Master spoke to Lin Yi with his injuries. He knew that his strength couldn't be compared to Lin Yi. However, Lin Yi was a member of the Saint Soul Heaven sect and a disciple of the Celestial Light Peak. Naturally, he couldn't let Lin Yi say such disrespectful words to offend the Great Emperor. The other Peak Masters and Elders nodded in agreement with the sky-dazzling Peak Master. Let's not talk about him. Sect Master, do you know about the Tianlan True Domain? Lin Yi waved his hand. He didn't want to be entangled in the topic of the Great Emperor. He was curious about the Tianlan True Domain. When he mentioned the Tianlan True Domain, the expressions of the Peak Masters and Elders couldn't escape his eyes. Needless to say, there must be something he didn't know about the Tianlan True Domain. The Tianlan True Domain is the center of the Divine Continent. It's not a stage for true experts and geniuses. You must be careful and keep a low profile. Those below the Saint Realm are ants. Those below the Great Sage are weaklings. Only after becoming a Great Sage can one be considered a true expert. However, even a Great Sage has just stepped on the path of becoming an expert. Donghua Shuejian said seriously. The Tianlan True Domain was millions of times stronger than the Heavenly Purification Domain. That place was a heaven for experts and demons. Similarly, it was hell for the weak. One careless mistake, and they would vanish in a thin air. Understood. By the way, I'll leave tomorrow and make a trip to the Taiyu sect. I will wipe out all the people and forces in the Cloudy Sky Kingdom that can threaten the Shengling Heavenly Sect. These are some treasures I obtained from the ruins of the Grand Xia. They will be useful to the Shengling Heavenly Sect. Lin Yi said unhurriedly. At the same time, a spatial ring appeared in his hand. Inside the interspatial ring were the cultivation resources and cultivation methods he had prepared for the Shengling Heavenly Sect. There were also countless saint artifacts and saint runes, all of which he had obtained from the ruins of the Grand Xia. Of course, many things were already useless to him. However, things that were useless to him were absolute treasures to the people of the Holy Spirit heavenly sect. For example, he did not use a 1,000-pattern saint weapon. He did not even use a 10,000-pattern saint weapon that was slightly weaker. However, 1,000 inscriptions saint weapons and 10,000 inscriptions saint weapons were mythical existences to the Shengling heavenly sect. Even in the Empire, they were the family treasures of the super clans. With that, he turned around and left. He walked out of the Holy Spirit Palace. After a long time, Dongwu Xuejian and the others recovered from their shock. It was because Lin Ye's tone was too casual. How domineering and powerful was he to wipe out the people and forces that could threaten the Shengling heavenly sect in the entire Cloudy Sky Kingdom? The Celestial Light Peak Master was stunned and did not know what to say. Then, his gaze shifted to the spatial ring in Dongwu Xuejian's hand. They were all super experts. Although they had never come into contact with spatial treasures, they could see that the ring Lin Yi took out should be a spatial ring. Just the spatial ring alone was a peerless treasure. There were only a few in the entire heavenly cleansing territory, not to mention the Cloudy Sky Kingdom. Then, the items in the spatial ring would definitely not be bad. He has become unfathomable, far from what we can compare to. Dongwu Xuejian said softly. He was happy and disappointed. He was happy because Lin Yi had walked out of the Shengling heavenly sect. He was disappointed because Lin Yi was about to leave the Shengling heavenly sect for the heavenly wave true domain and walk to a bigger stage. As he spoke, his consciousness opened the spatial ring. He looked curiously inside the spatial ring. The moment his consciousness entered the spatial ring, Dongwu Xuejian's expression was stunned, and his entire body couldn't help but tremble. This scene shocked the Celestial Light Peak Master and the others. What did Dongwu Xuejian see inside the spatial ring? Sect Master, an elder called softly. This pulled Dongwu Xuejian back to reality from his shock. Take a look. Dongwu Xuejian withdrew his consciousness. He shook his head, calming his shocked heart a little. He reached out, and the spatial ring floated in front of him. The others released their divine senses and sent them into their spatial rings. Just like Dongwu Xuejian, all of their faces were filled with shock and their bodies trembled. 1,000-pattern saint artifact. 10,000-pattern saint artifact. This is heaven-defying. There are so many 1,000-pattern saint artifacts and 10,000-pattern saint artifacts. Who can shake the Shengling heavenly sect in the future? 1,300 1,100-pattern saint artifacts, 118,000-pattern saint artifacts, and 13 10,000-pattern saint artifacts. This is a peerless saint-level defensive rune. There are more than a dozen saint-level techniques and martial techniques. The spatial ring was filled with cultivation resources. Every item inside could cause a bloodbath in the Cloudy Sky Kingdom. Each item could suffocate the experts of the Shengling heavenly sect. They hadn't thought that Lin Yi would give the Shengling heavenly sect such a terrifying amount of resources. This time, the Shengling heavenly sect was truly powerful. Even if the Shengling heavenly sect couldn't surpass the Cloudy Sky Kingdom, they could at least rely on a few 10,000-pattern saint artifacts to protect themselves. Have you noticed? Among the runes, 8 are defensive and 1 is offensive. Among the 13 10,000 inscriptions sacred weapons, 10 are defensive and suppressive. There are only 3 offensive ones. As for the martial techniques and cultivation techniques, they're all heavy. Martial techniques, Dongwu Xuejian said seriously. Although there were thousands of items here, he could see Lin Ye's intentions behind these treasures. He's protecting the Shengling heavenly sect. These treasures are enough to make the Shengling heavenly sect invincible, but they don't give us any offensive treasures. Even if the Shengling heavenly sect develops to a certain extent, it won't be able to break out of the sky. Perhaps the Shengling heavenly sect can sweep through the Cloudy Sky Kingdom, or even have a place in the heavenly purification territory, but it won't be able to rule. His vision is further than ours. 10,000 Pattern Saint artifacts are the Shengling Heavenly Sect's final trump card. Each of us will have 1,000 Pattern Saint artifact. In the Shengling Palace, Dong Wushuejian and the elders were discussing how to deal with these resources. Although they all wanted these treasures and resources, they knew that these treasures and resources belonged to the Shengling Heavenly Sect. They didn't have the right or the guts to touch them. If Lin Yi could take out such heaven-defying resources and treasures, they believed that Lin Yi could easily kill those who had evil intentions. Now, they finally understood how easy it was for Lin Yi to deal with the Taiyu sect. With his strength and the power of the 10,000 Pattern Saint artifact, he could sweep through the Taiyu sect. Even if he encountered a saint from the Taiyu sect, he could protect himself. Naturally, they didn't know. They didn't know that Lin Yi was a divine will saint. Chapter 374. Tianyao Peak. One of the 9 peaks of the Shengling Heavenly Sect. The Taiwei sect has the support of the First Prince and the Blood Spirit sect. If they join forces against the Shengling Heavenly Sect, the Shengling Heavenly Sect won't last long. Sister, what should we do? The Lingjin courtyard used to be where the top genius of the Shengling Heavenly Sect, Lin Yi, cultivated. After Lin Yi went to attend the royal banquet, Luo Bingwe, Luo Xing, Lingxi, and Luo Ling lived there. Lin Yi's influence made the geniuses and experts of the Shengling Heavenly Sect not dare to have any thoughts about them. Besides their relationship with Lin Yi, they also had talent and strength. It could be said that their talent and strength were in the top 10 of the Shengling Heavenly Sect. 3 years had passed. There was still no news about Lin Yi, which made the 4 girls very worried. Now, the Shengling Heavenly Sect was being suppressed by other sections. If the Shengling Heavenly Sect was destroyed, the experts of the Cloud Sky Kingdom would definitely have their eyes on them. To them, this was undoubtedly a calamity. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. It's been more than 3 years. Lin Yi should be back by now. You 3 leave the Cloud Sky Kingdom first. I'll wait for him here. Luo Bingyue was as cold as ever. She was like an ice goddess, beautiful and unparalleled. Her temperament was like a goddess, unapproachable and unapproachable. I don't know how brother-in-law is now. 3 years had passed, and Luo Xing was already slender and beautiful. Her life force was extremely strong, and her temperament was lively like an orchid in an empty valley. With the sacred body of life, she was even better than Luo Bingyue. Only the playfulness and cuteness on her beautiful face remained unchanged. Brother Lin is so outstanding. He'll be fine. It's said that the Great Xiao World ruins will take 3 years. Maybe Brother Lin is on his way back to the Shengling Heavenly Sect. Lingxi said sweetly. The elf princess of the elf clan was naturally intelligent and beautiful. Although she was growing older, her appearance hadn't changed much. She still looked like a 14 or 15-year-old girl. Little girl, you're right. Just as Lingxi's voice fell, a calm voice sounded. His voice was flat, but when the 4 women heard it, they were all shocked. At the same time, he looked toward the entrance of Lingjiang Courtyard. At the entrance, a figure appeared in the line of sight of the 4 women. Seeing this figure, the 4 women couldn't help but be stunned. The expressions on their beautiful faces kept changing. There was joy, excitement, disbelief, and excitement. After a momentary daze, the courtyard became incomparably quiet. It was as if time had stopped in this scene. Soon, the silence was broken by the 4 girls. Brother Lin, Lin Yi, Sir Lin, brother-in-law. The 4 women were overjoyed and stood up. Lingxi and Luo Xing even ran toward Lin Yi. She threw herself into Lin Yi's arms. Crystal tears fell from her beautiful eyes. She hugged Lin Yi tightly, as if she was worried that Lin Yi would fly away. She also seemed to be confirming whether what was in front of her was an illusion or reality. Brother-in-law, Xing missed you so much. Luo Xing was sure that what was in front of her was not an illusion. She sobbed softly. I'm back. You've grown so big. Lin Yi's face revealed a happy smile. He seemed to have forgotten that Luo Xing was actually a little older than him. He was already 21 years old. Luo Xing was naturally no longer a child. However, in his impression, he had always thought of Luo Xing as a little girl. Moreover, Luo Xing had always looked 15 or 16 years old. Brother Lin, what about me? Lingxi looked at Lin Yi enviously. After Luo Xing let go of Lin Yi, she asked. Lingxi has also grown up. Lin Yi smiled and let Lingxi and Luo Xing hold his hand. He walked toward Luo Ling and Luo Bingwei. After more than 3 years, they were finally reunited. Greetings, Sir Lin. Luo Ling bowed to Lin Yi with a happy smile on her beautiful face. You made good progress. Lin Yi looked at Luo Ling and found that Luo Ling's cultivation had reached the celestial realm. Among the 4 women, her cultivation was the highest. In terms of talent, she was not as good as Luo Bingwei, Luo Xing, or Lingxi of the Elf clan. This showed that she had great opportunities and worked harder. You're back. Luo Bingwei was as cold as ever. So was her voice. However, Lin Yi could hear a slight gentleness in Luo Bingwei's voice. He knew that Luo Bingwei's character was born this way. Cultivating the ice cultivation method made her even colder. However, although she was cold to people on the surface, it was not that she was indifferent. She had the gentleness of a girl. She just didn't show it. Yes, I'm back. This time, I'll leave in 2 days. Lin Yi nodded with a smile. Luo Bingwei was his fiancée. Although their relationship had been dissolved, it did not affect their friendship. You'll leave in 2 days? Luo Bingwei's cold and beautiful face showed a trace of surprise. There was also a trace of disappointment and reluctance. Brother Lin, where are you going? Young Master Lin, you're leaving the Shengling heavenly sect. Brother-in-law, you're too ridiculous. Hearing Lin Ye's words, Lingxi, Luo Ling and Luo Xing were all very surprised. Their beautiful eyes all looked at Lin Yi. There was confusion and curiosity in their eyes, but more than that, there was reluctance. They thought that Lin Yi just came back to deal with some things and then left. They did not think that Lin Yi came back to pick them up. To the Tianlan True Domain. Lin Yi sat down on the chair in front of the tea table. He took the fragrant tea from Luo Ling and tasted it gently. Tianlan True Domain. Is it far from the Tianmu Domain? Brother-in-law, how long will you be gone for? Tianlan True Domain. The expressions on the women's faces kept changing. Although they did not know where the Tianlan True Domain was or how far it was from the Tianmu Domain, they knew that the Theta Scarbii point was far away from each other. One was the Tianmu Domain. The other was the Tianlan True Domain. No one would believe that they were very close to each other. The Tianlan True Domain is a place very far away. I might not be able to come back from this trip for the rest of my life. Lin Yi said seriously. What kind of place was the Tianlan True Domain? It was the center of the Divine Land, one of the 4 great domains. It could represent the civilization of the Divine Land. It was billions of miles away from the Tianmu Domain. That place was thousands of times more powerful than the Tianmu Domain. It was not easy to come back from that place unless he became strong enough. Even if he came back, he would have to deal with some things that he could not deal with now. Therefore, he was not lying when he said that he might not be able to come back in this life. I won't come back in this life. Brother-in-law, Xing will miss you. Luo Xing's beautiful eyes were slightly red, and 2 strings of crystal tears could not help but fall. Luo Bingwei, Luo Ling and Lingxi all looked at Lin Yi reluctantly. Chapter 375. Xing, what's wrong? Aren't you going to the Tianlan True Domain with me? Lin Yi asked curiously as he looked at the weeping Luo Xing. It seemed that Luo Xing was unwilling to go to the Tianlan True Domain. Instead, she wanted to stay in the heavenly purification domain or return to the Sky Sea realm. If that was the case, he was really worried. Brother-in-law, what did you just say? Upon hearing Lin Ye's words, Luo Bingwei, Lingxi, and Luo Ling seemed to have understood something. However, Luo Xing did not understand. I'm back this time. I'm here to bring you to the Tianlan True Domain. You don't want to go to the Tianlan True Domain? Lin Yi also knew that Luo Xing, and the others had misunderstood his words. He could not help but find it funny when he thought about it. You're bringing us to the Tianlan True Domain? Brother-in-law, you're so naughty. Why didn't you say it clearly? A sweet smile appeared on Luo Xing's beautiful face. She wiped away her tears and shook Lin Ye's arm relentlessly. She acted coquettishly and did not care about her sister and the others at the side. However, the Tianlan True Domain is not like the Yuntian Kingdom. That place is the center of the Divine Land, one of the 4 major domains. It's thousands of times more powerful than the Heavenly Purification Domain. Even a saint cannot be called an expert there. Therefore, after we go there, we have to keep a low profile. You have to cultivate well. I obtained some good treasures in the Great Xiao World ruins. You won't lack cultivation resources. You just have to cultivate hard. Lin Yi could not do anything about Luo Xing. Although he had broken off his relationship with Luo Bingyue, this girl still called him brother-in-law. He was also used to this address. He loved Luo Xing very much. He had already decided that after going to the Tianlan True Domain, he would find a safe place for Luo Xing, and the others to cultivate in peace. He would go out a train when their cultivation had improved. As he spoke, his divine consciousness moved. Then he took out the 4 storage pouches. The 4 storage bags flew towards Luo Bingyue and the others. Inside were the cultivation resources, cultivation techniques, and sacred weapons that he had carefully prepared for Luo Bingyue and the others. Their cultivation was low, but he could use heaven-defying resources and the sacred weapons to make up for it. Brother Lin, this is a sacred weapon. Brother-in-law, this is an upper-grade sacred weapon. This feather robe is actually a supreme grade 10,000 inscriptions saint artifact. A complete set. The 4 girls know they're the treasures. After a long time, they calmed down a little. The treasures and resources in the storage bag were too terrifying. It was completely beyond their imagination. With their cultivation strength, they were only ordinary sacred weapons. They were not even 100 inscriptions sacred weapons. They didn't expect the storage bag to be full of 1,000 inscriptions sacred weapons and above. Moreover, there were several 10,000 inscriptions saint artifacts, and they were complete sets. If a complete set was refined and mastered, a celestial realm warrior could even kill a half-saint. There was not a single sacred weapon in the Cloud Sky Kingdom, let alone a complete set. More importantly, the items, resources, and treasures in the storage bag were all suitable for them. They were almost completely tailor-made for them. They all knew that Lin Yi had prepared them for them. Naturally, they were suitable for them. They were very grateful. They also knew that the Great Xiao World ruins was extremely dangerous. The treasures Lin Yi had prepared for them must have encountered a lot of danger. Work hard on your cultivation, especially the intent realm. After the intent realm, you can control the domain. In that case, you can forcibly control a supreme sacred weapon. There is a supreme sacred weapon inside. Don't touch it unless you have no other choice. Lin Yi said seriously. He was already a 5th tribulation half-saint. He had stepped into the fiend god taboo and felt the terror of an invincible saint. He had also killed the great sage. His divine sense was also a saint. Naturally, he had experienced things that celestials didn't. Therefore, he knew the importance of the domain. He also understood the terror of a supreme sacred weapon. In Luo Bingyue and the other storage bags, there was a supreme sacred weapon. These were the 4 supreme sacred artifacts that he had taken out from the sacred palace. Supreme sacred weapon? This is a supreme sacred weapon. Luo Xing, and the others' expressions changed when they heard Lin Yi say supreme sacred weapon. A 10,000 inscriptions sacred weapon had already shocked them. A supreme sacred weapon was even more unimaginable. Now, Lin Yi actually said that there were supreme sacred weapons in their storage bags. In shock, Luo Xing found a short sword in the storage bag. There was a magical seal on the short sword. She couldn't tell what grade the short sword was. At first, she thought it was an ordinary spiritual weapon and didn't care at all. Yes, this is a supreme sacred weapon. If you're below the half-saint realm, you can activate it with a drop of blood essence. But you only have one chance in a lifetime. The power of a supreme sacred weapon is enough to kill a great sage or even a saint king. Lin Yi nodded. Yes, this short sword was a supreme sacred weapon. However, it was sealed and its grade couldn't be seen. With a domain and a half-saint cultivation, there was a chance to refine and master it. Celestials could only use their own blood essence to forcibly activate it and erupt with destructive power. However, it could only be used once. Then, Luo Bingyue, Ling Shi, and Luo Ling each found a supreme sacred weapon in their storage bags. Like Luo Xing, there was a seal on the supreme sacred weapon, so the grade couldn't be seen. Seeing that the inconspicuous weapon was actually a supreme sacred weapon, they carefully put it away. This was an absolute trump card and a life-saving treasure. Lin Yi tasted the fragrant tea at the side. Luo Bingyue and the others were tidying up the resources and treasures in the storage bags and putting them into the spatial rings. After a full quarter of an hour, the four girls finished dealing with these treasures and resources. Brother Lin, what is your cultivation level now? Ling Shi asked curiously. Now that Lin Ye's cultivation was already at the fifth tribulation half-saint realm, they naturally couldn't see through it. Not to mention that they were just celestials. Even if they were true saints, they might not be able to see through Lin Ye's cultivation level. After Ling Shi asked, Luo Bingyue, Luo Xing and Luo Ling all looked at Lin Yi with curiosity. Lin Ye's cultivation level was definitely the thing they were most curious about. Fifth tribulation half-saint. Lin Yi said indifferently. A fifth tribulation half-saint might be considered an expert in the Cloudy Sky Kingdom. But in the Heavenly Sun Empire, they were nothing. Not to mention places like the Heavenly Wave True Region. Half-saint, he is indeed a half-saint. He is already a fifth tribulation half-saint. After the ninth tribulation half-saint, he should be a true saint. Brother-in-law, your strength should be able to fight a true saint, right? No, Brother Lin is definitely not a fifth tribulation half-saint. He should be a true saint and not an ordinary true saint. He should be the kind of true saint that is invincible in the same realm. What is going on? When they heard that Lin Yi was a fifth tribulation half-saint, they revealed an expression of as expected. However, Ling Shi's face revealed a look of confusion. She felt that Lin Ye's cultivation level was far from what a fifth tribulation half-saint could compare to. He was the kind of true saint that could kill a true saint in an instant. Chapter 376. How could this be? Luo Bingyue was stunned. She knew that Lin Yi wouldn't lie to them, but after hearing Ling Xi's words, they could feel that the fifth tribulation half-true saint wasn't simple. They just didn't know what was going on. Ling Xi is right. My divine sense has reached the peak of the 55th order. That's why it's like this. Lin Yi smiled. Ling Xi's senses were indeed shocking. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to do this because he was a divine spiritual master, a powerful divine saint. He was best at hiding and observing. Nothing could escape his eyes. The fact that Ling Xi could sense it showed how magical she was. Divine saint. Divine saint. No wonder. Divine saint is invincible in the same realm. In a quiet room, the four girls exclaimed after hearing Lin Ye's words. Their beautiful faces were filled with a myriad of expressions. A saint, a saint, a saint, a saint, a saint, a saint that transcends mortals. Moreover, he was the most terrifying existence among saints. A divine saint. In the past, they didn't even dare to think about it. But now a divine saint was right in front of them. Cultivate hard. That's your main direction. It's martial Tao, intent, and domain. Cultivate first. Tomorrow, you'll leave the Holy Spirit heavenly sect to deal with some matters. After that, you'll leave the Cloudy Sky Kingdom and rush back to the Heavenly Sun Empire. Otherwise, you'll miss the time. Lin Yi stood up and walked to the room he used to live in. He was a little tired after rushing back. Returning to the Holy Spirit heavenly sect was a good opportunity for him to rest. After leaving the cloudy sky kingdom, what awaited him was danger and challenge. It was obviously impossible for him to rest well. The next day, Lin Yi called Luo, Bingyue, and the other three into the 9 heavenly space and quietly left the Holy Spirit heavenly sect with them. On the same day, the Taiyu sect vanished. All the experts above the heavenly realm were killed. The third day, the Blood Spirit cult and moon-praying sect vanished. Just like the Taiyu sect, all the experts above the heavenly realm were killed. The fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day, the seventh day, on the 9th day. In the past few days, all the sects and forces above the 6th rank in the kingdom of Cloud, heavenly kingdom, had been crushed. All the experts above the celestial being realm had been suppressed by the saint's might. Even a saint would be suppressed by the destructive saint aura. Saints were like ants in front of him. No one could clearly see the figure of this omnipotent expert, let alone know who he was. After 10 days, the forces of the kingdom of Cloud, heavenly kingdom, were no longer suppressed. Gradually, all the experts realized a problem. Over there, all the major forces within the kingdom of Cloud, heavenly kingdom, had been suppressed or killed. Only the Saint Soul heavenly sect remained unscathed. More importantly, above the Blood Spirit Church, the moon-worshipping sect, and the Taiyu sect, there was a streak of sword chi that lingered for a long time. The sword chi formed the words Holy Spirit. The situation couldn't be clearer. That person must have come from the Saint Spirit heavenly sect, or he must have wanted to help the Saint Spirit heavenly sect, so that no one in the Cloud heavenly kingdom could threaten the Saint Spirit heavenly sect. Just as the major powers of the Cloudy Sky Kingdom were in a state of panic, the Cloud Sky Kingdom made an announcement. The new king was the 8th prince. The 8th prince, Sun Wushuang, became the new king of the Cloudy Sky Kingdom. When the news spread, the Cloudy Sky Kingdom was in an uproar. This was because the first prince had always been the most likely candidate to become the new king. Not long ago, the first prince was the regent of the kingdom. Recently, there were even rumors that the first prince was going to ascend to the throne. No one had expected such a change. Thinking of what had happened to the Saint Spirit heavenly sect, the Taiyu sect, and the Cloudy Sky Kingdom, everyone seemed to have seen the truth. That was that omnipotent character who could even control the Cloud Sky Kingdom. Anyone who offended the Saint Spirit heavenly sect would be wiped out. Even the first prince was no exception. For a time, the Saint Spirit heavenly sect was pushed to the center of the storm, making it even more mysterious. No one dared to offend the Saint Spirit heavenly sect. Thank you, Captain. In the royal palace of the Cloudy Sky Kingdom, in the 3rd prince's palace, Sun Wuyu stood beside Lin Yi and said, "The current king of the Cloudy Sky Kingdom, Sun Wushuang, he was the 3rd prince's brother. With his current talent and strength, it was naturally easy for him to ascend to the throne. However, he had no intention of becoming the king of the Cloudy Sky Kingdom. However, he intended to let his brother inherit the throne. Because Lin Yi's strength had swept the Cloudy Sky Kingdom, the Cloudy Sky Kingdom naturally did not dare to offend Lin Yi. In addition, Sun Wuyu's words carried weight now. The 8th prince's son Wushuang naturally became the king, while the 1st prince's wings and power were all empty. It could not affect Sun Wushuang at all. Cut off all the past. Pursue a higher martial arts path. If you have strength, you have everything. Words are law." Lin Yi said lightly. Since Sun Wuyu was going to the Tianlan True Domain, if he wanted to survive there, he had to let go of everything in the past, cultivate hard, and grow between life and death. Understood. Sun Wuyu nodded and answered. He was a saint, and he had reached the middle stage of the saint realm. However, in front of Lin Yi, he did not dare to act like a saint. Because of Lin Yi's identity. Because of Lin Yi's strength. Because of his respect for Lin Yi. "Where's Lai Tenyu?" Lin Yi looked at Sun Wuyu. Lai Tenyu was with him, and they were about to return to the Tianyang Empire. However, Lai Tenyu had not appeared yet. Could it be that something had happened? "We'll be there soon," Sun Wuyu said. Sure enough, in less than an hour, Lai Tenyu appeared in front of Lin Yi. Captain, Lai Tenyu saw Lin Yi and greeted him. Have you dealt with the matter? Lin Yi looked at Lai Tenyu. It's been dealt with. Lai Tenyu nodded and answered. His whole person was as cold and sharp as the long saber in his hand. Cultivating the saber Dao, he was indomitable, domineering, and unyielding. He was born for the saber Dao, so he was even more so. Then let's go. After Lin Yi finished speaking, he walked out of the palace. Lai Tenyu and Sun Wuyu followed beside Lin Yi. The three of them quickly left the palace and Monarch City. With the help of the teleportation formation, they rushed towards the Tianyang Empire and tried to reach the Tianyang Empire within a month. Otherwise, they would miss the time to go to the Tianlan True region. 1 month. They flew at full speed. Finally, the Tianyang Empire's Sky City appeared in their sight. 1 more day before we go to the Tianlan True region. How are you going to the Tianlan True region? When they arrived outside Sky City, the three of them landed and walked into Sky City. On the way, Lin Yi looked at Sun Wuyu and Lai Tenyu. Previously, the two of them said that they wanted to go to the Tianlan True region, but they did not have a slot. However, they said that they had a way to go there. During this time, he did not ask Lai Tenyu and the others how to go there. I found a space treasure in the Great Xia World ruins. We'll enter the spatial treasure. Captain, you only need to bring the spatial treasure with you. That way, we'll be brought to the true heavenly domain. It's just that the spatial treasure is too small. Otherwise, you could bring more people with you. Sun Wuyu said with a smile. He took out a palm-sized pagoda. Chapter 377. Captain. Lin Yi and the other two had just arrived in Sky City and saw many familiar faces. These people were all members of his god-battling team. Other than Lai Tianyu and Sun Wuyu who had been by his side, the other 12 people were all waiting for him. When they saw Lin Yi appear, they all greeted him respectfully. There were 12 saints. Furthermore, he was a very powerful saint. Why are you all here? Lin Yi walked to Shui Feng and the others and asked. The god-battling team members came from all over the Tianyang Empire. They all had their own families and sections. They were the top geniuses of their families and sects and were highly valued by their families and sections. This was even more so after reaching the Saint Realm. Lin Yi was curious that all of them were gathered here. Captain, let's go to the Tianlan True domain together, Shui Feng said. The others nodded. Hearing this, Lin Yi did not say anything. The group walked towards an inn. Have you all been in Sky City? Or have you gone back? They settled down in the inn for the time being. Lin Yi looked at everyone and asked. Captain, I've already gone back. The sects will not restrict me. I returned 3 days ago. My family encouraged me to go to the Tianlan True domain. I've already made arrangements in the sections. Shui Feng, Zhou Baiyu, and the others answered. They were not close to the Tianyang Empire, but they could use the teleportation array to quickly teleport to their sects and families. Only Lin Yi and the other two were the furthest away from the Tianyang Empire. They were the most remote and did not have a teleportation array to use. Therefore, the three of them were the last to return. What's going on in Sky City? Lin Yi asked. 5 people were teleported to the Tianlan True domain. He did not know what these guys were up to. There's no movement, but Dishi Xiao and Shun Yu came to find you. Zhuge Ling shook her head. She was the Heavenly Sun Empire's Heavenly Cities Zhuge family's prideful daughter. She didn't need more than a day to return home. Therefore, she was most aware of the happenings in Heavenly City. During this period of time, Dishi Xiao and Chun Yu had visited Lin Yi. However, when Lin Yi returned to the Cloud Sky Kingdom, he naturally returned resentfully. 1 more day. Take a rest. It won't be easy to rest in the true heavenly domain. After Lin Yi finished speaking, he left the hall. The others also left. Even though they were saints, Lin Ye's words didn't make them feel disgusted at all, because they knew that Lin Ye's respect had nothing to do with one's cultivation. Even if they were saints, they had no chance against Lin Yi. Besides, Lin Yi was their captain. Their respect for Lin Yi came from the bottom of their hearts. A day passed. Shui Feng and the others all entered the spatial treasure in Sun Wuyu's hand. Sun Wuyu also entered in the end. The pagoda was only the size of a palm and fell into Lin Ye's hand. After keeping the pagoda, Lin Yi walked towards the imperial palace. When Lin Yi arrived at the imperial palace, the other four had already arrived. Tian Yi, Dishi Xiao, Murong Nan, and Chen Yu. Lin Yi. Chen Yu was the first to speak. His eyes were filled with curiosity and confusion. He already knew that the great emperor had betrothed his own sister to Lin Yi. To be honest, he really didn't understand what the great emperor was thinking. Even though Lin Yi was a demon, he wouldn't casually betroth his sister to Lin Yi. Chen Yu. Lin Yi looked at Chen Yu and nodded to greet him. In fact, Chen Yu was his brother-in-law. However, he didn't want to acknowledge this marriage. Brother Lin, you're in the wrong here. No matter what, Chen Yu is still your brother-in-law. Dishi Xiao couldn't help but laugh. He opened his mouth and said loudly. After saying that, he started laughing. When the great emperor betrothed the little princess, she wasn't in the empire. However, the empire's big families and higher-ups still knew about this. The Tian family was one of the top 10 families in the empire. Naturally, they knew that the great emperor had betrothed the little princess to Lin Yi. Here, there were no outsiders. They were all the top demons of the Tianyang Empire's top families and sections. Moreover, the Dishi family, the Tian family, and the Murong family also saw it. This time, the people the great emperor had chosen to go to the Tianlan true domain were all beneficial to Lin Yi. As long as one wasn't a fool, one could see the great emperor's thoughts at a glance. The great emperor valued Lin Yi. Even though Tian Yi and Lin Yi had fought once, Tian, it wasn't Lin Ye's enemy. I don't like this title. I really don't understand what the great emperor is thinking. Lin Yi and Chen Yu spoke at the same time. Chen Yu was curious about the great emperor's thoughts. On the other hand, Lin Yi didn't want to use this title. He always felt awkward. He really didn't care about the marriage bestowed by the great emperor. As long as he left the Tianyang Empire, he would be free to fly in the sky and fish in the sea. When the time came, this marriage would be left unsettled. Quiet. At this moment, Lord Yun Sheng appeared in front of everyone. He gently waved his hand, indicating Lin Yi and the others to be quiet. Lord Yun Sheng, Tian Yi, Dishi Xiao, Murong Nan, Chen Yu, and Tian Yi. They bowed to Lord Yun Sheng. They waited for Lord Yun Sheng's instructions. This time, we're going to the Tianlan True Domain. Not only the 5 of you. There are 5 people from the 8 major foreign races and 5 from the Tianjin Empire. Lord Yun Sheng said. His words made the 5 people present curious. They looked around, but they didn't see anyone else coming. Could it be that they weren't teleported together? Lord Yun Sheng. People from the 8 major foreign races and the Tianjin Empire. Aren't they going with us? Dishi Xiao asked. Among them, Dishi Xiao was the most active. Like Sun Wuyu, he was good at making friends. The Tianlan True Domain is vast. Any sect or force can wipe out the Tianyang Empire. The place you are going to is the same as the Tianjin Empire and the 8 major foreign races. However, it is not the same place. You will know when the time comes. Remember, don't go down the wrong path. Otherwise, you will disappear. The best choice is Cebu Gakuen. If you can't become a member of Cebu Gakuen, become a disciple of Shengwu College. At the very least, join a super sect or force. Lord Yunsheng instructed them calmly. It was like a parent telling a junior who was about to go on a long journey. The heavenly purification domain was hundreds of millions of miles away from the Tianlan True Domain. Even if there were no dangers along the way, it would take a saint 10 years to fly there day and night. Lin Yi didn't know if they could survive after leaving the heavenly purification domain for the Tianlan True Domain. Even if they did, they might not be able to return to the heavenly purification domain in their lifetime. What's the difference between Cebu Gakuen and Shengwu College? The Sky Sea Realm also has a Shengwu College. Lin Yi asked curiously. Shengwu College and Cebu Gakuen only had one word difference. The Sky Sea Realm had a Shengwu College. Needless to say, Shengwu College and Cebu Gakuen definitely had some connection. When he was in Xingwu College, the vice dean had also mentioned Cebu Gakuin, but he didn't pay attention. Cebu Gakuin is the main sect of Xingwu College. All Xingwu College is a branch of Cebu Gakuin. Chapter 378. I see. After hearing Lord Cloud Saint's words, everyone was enlightened. There were countless Xingwu College in the entire Divine Land. But there was only one Cebu Gakuin. Cebu Gakuin was the headquarters of Xingwu College. Similarly, Cebu Gakuin was one of the most powerful sects in the Divine Land. It had stood proudly in the Divine Land for tens of thousands of years. Try to keep a low profile when you go to the Tianlan True Domain. That place is heaven in the Divine Land. The Tianlan True Domain, the Divine Land Sky Domain, the St. Moon Sky Domain, and the Abysmal Sky Domain are known as the four great domains of the Divine Land. Explore slowly in the future. I wish you all the best in the 9 states and bring glory to the Tianlan Domain. Lord Yun Sheng took in a deep breath. With a wave of his hand, 36 saints appeared at the altar in the center of the Imperial Palace. Each of them had a diamond-shaped crystal in their hands. The crystal emitted a destructive aura. Rumble, rumble, when the 36 saints activated their cultivation techniques and performed a series of mysterious and obscure spells. The crystal emitted a terrifying power. The world trembled at this moment. The space was constantly distorted and shattered. Gradually, the 36 diamond-shaped crystals turned into a magical light. The magical light surged toward the altar. Boom! At this moment, the altar was activated. 36 rays of light, under the magical effect of the altar, merged into a beam of light. The beam of light shot up into the sky and pierced through the 9 heavens. At this moment, an unparalleled destructive arc descended from the sky. In the depths of the void, the space rotated. The sky and the earth were connected by the magical beam of light. At the altar, the light of teleportation erupted. The light of teleportation condensed together, and its power was shocking. Speed up. Lord Cloud Saint was anxious and urged Lin Yi and the others to quickly enter the altar. Otherwise, when the power of the crystal disappeared, the teleportation would fail and the precious resources would be wasted. Whoosh, whoosh. Without hesitation, Lin Yi and the others flashed and entered the teleportation light of the altar. As soon as they entered the teleportation light, Lin Yi felt the whole world spinning. Even with the power of space, he felt extremely small at this moment and could not compete with it at all. Just after the 5 of them entered the teleportation light, the light of teleportation took them into the depths of the 9 heavens and then disappeared. The light of teleportation light. And the light also disappeared. Heaven and earth returned to normal. However, Lin Yi and the others had completely left the heavenly empire and went to a more powerful world. Within the teleportation light, the destructive power of space tore apart the 5 of them. Even though Qiani and the others were half-saints and top geniuses, their cultivation methods were also at the sage level and they had peerless emperor physiques or saint physiques. They were still unable to withstand the destructive, tearing power of space. Instinctively, he spread out his hand to resist the destructive tearing. The other 4 had also unleashed their powerful defenses. In fact, they had even used their saint-tier defensive treasures. However, they were still unable to withstand the tearing power of the space. Their bodies continued to crumble apart. Xinyu's blood kept gushing out of his mouth. His aura became weaker and weaker. He even used the life-saving method given to him by the great emperor, but it was to no avail. Tian Yi was the same. Di Shao was the same. Morong Nan was the same. Only Lin Yi was slightly better. The cracks on his body were healed by the self-healing body as soon as they appeared. The powerful physique of the divine dragon 9 transformations was fully displayed at this moment. How long will the teleportation take? Lin Yi looked at Xinyu. He was the son of the great emperor and had heaven-defying talent. He was the prince that the great emperor valued the most. Otherwise, he would not have been allowed to go to the heavenly wave true domain. As the son of the heavenly sun great emperor, he must know a lot of secrets. He should know a little about Theta Scarabii. Father said, a normal teleportation will take half a quarter of an hour. Shunyu was extremely weak and his aura was quickly fading away. Her body was almost completely destroyed by the tearing power of space. If this continued, in a few breaths of time, Shunyu would completely vanish into thin air and disappear from this world. He would not even have the chance to reincarnate. Half a quarter of an hour. Half a quarter of an hour. Half a quarter of an hour. Hearing Shunyu's words, Murong Nan, Di Shi Xiao, and Tian Yi were shocked and despair appeared in their eyes. The situation in front of them was not even half a quarter of an hour. Even if it was a dozen breaths of time, they would all disappear. The peerless geniuses did not expect that they would die in the teleportation and disappear. Their hearts were filled with despair and unwillingness. However, this was reality. What awaited them was eternal damnation. Come here. Lin Ye's eyes narrowed. He shouted for Shunyu and the others to hurry over. As he spoke, the supreme sacred armor, raging flames unfolded at this moment. A low-grade supreme sacred artifact had the power to destroy heaven and earth. This supreme sacred artifact was not of the offensive attribute, but of the defensive attribute. Defensive treasures were rarer than offensive treasures. Out of 100 treasures, there might not be one defensive treasure. Lin Yi had exchanged for this defensive supreme sacred artifact in the Great Xia World ruins. The supreme sacred armor erupted with the power of a sacred artifact that could destroy heaven and earth. The power of the sacred artifact resisted the tearing power. Suddenly, the power of the sacred artifact formed an invisible wall, blocking the tearing power outside. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Yi hurriedly recovered his body. He did not have the slightest confidence in half a quarter of an hour. The only thing he could do was to hold on. Hearing Lin Yi shout, Shunyu tried to get closer to Lin Yi. Tian Yi, Murong Nan, and Di Shi Xiao also came to Lin Yi's side. With the protection of the supreme sacred artifact, the tearing of their bodies stopped. They hurriedly took out sacred elixirs to heal their injuries while guarding against the tearing power. They were worried that Lin Yi would not be able to withstand the tearing power. Puff! A moment later, Lin Yi spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale and weak. Although a supreme sacred artifact was powerful, it was not something that a half-saint could fully control and use. Coupled with the impact of the tearing power in the teleportation light, Lin Yi could no longer withstand it. Power of space. Lin Yi could no longer withstand the backlash of the supreme sacred armor. His aura became weak, and the divine Dragon 9 transformations could not withstand the tearing power. His absolute defense collapsed, and his self-healing body could not keep up with the speed of destruction. His entire body was covered in blood, dyed red by fresh blood. He knew that if he continued to hold on like this, he would vanish into thin air. In desperation, he could no longer hold back and use the power of space. Rumble, rumble. Suddenly, the power of space and the tearing power collided with each other, creating a destructive explosion. Every time there was an explosion, the teleportation light shook once. Lin Yi and the others kept spitting out blood. Time seemed to have come to a standstill. After an unknown amount of time, Lin Yi was completely on the brink of destruction. Tian Yi and the others could only watch helplessly from the side, unable to help. They all knew that if Lin Yi did not save them, they would definitely not be destroyed. At this moment, the teleportation light exploded with a dazzling brilliance. An unparalleled tearing power exploded, disintegrating into countless specks of starlight. Chapter 379. Puff blue waves rippled on the lake, and a cool breeze blew gently. Suddenly, a loud sound was heard. Waves rose from the lake. Gradually, the lake calmed down again. A young man in green floated above the lake. The lake water around him was quickly dyed red. It was blood red and looked terrifying. After an unknown period of time, the young man weakly grunted and opened his eyes weakly. He couldn't even move his fingers. At this moment, there was a slight fluctuation in space. A figure appeared in the air above the young man. When this figure landed, it was actually a peerlessly beautiful woman. Her purity and charm were fused into one. Master. After the woman appeared, she saw the young man above the lake. A look of shock and worry appeared on her beautiful face. Her figure flashed and landed. She picked up the young man above the lake and flew toward the shore. Master, what's wrong? What happened? Silent Soul scanned the young man with her divine sense and was shocked. She asked the young man anxiously. She was Silent Soul. The young man was Lin Yi, who was teleported over from heavenly purification territory. Seeing Lin Yi covered in wounds, she was worried and confused. She didn't know what had happened. With Master's cultivation, even a pinnacle saint would be more powerful than him. There was a problem with the teleportation. I was injured by the spatial tear. I can't recover for now. Lin Yi said. He didn't expect the teleportation to be so dangerous. He almost died in it. He swept his gaze around and couldn't help but frown. Master, heal yourself first. Silent Soul will protect you. Silent Soul was worried about Lin Yi's injuries. If it was in the past, Lin Yi would heal himself instantly, even if he was injured. But this time, his injuries were very serious. Even the self-healing body couldn't heal him instantly. He could only heal slowly. She didn't know that Lin Yi's injuries were caused by forcefully supporting the supreme artifact and the backlash from the spatial force. Let me suppress my injuries first. Lin Yi didn't hesitate. He sat cross-legged, threw a divine pill into his mouth, and began to adjust his breathing. He was well aware of his own injuries. It was obviously impossible for him to recover from his injuries in a short period of time. If it were any other injuries, he would be able to recover very quickly. However, his injuries this time were caused by the backlash of the spatial power and the overuse of the supreme sacred weapon. Time passed by second. It took a full hour for Lin Yi to suppress his injuries. His expression was a little ugly. It was because his injuries had exceeded his expectations and were harder to recover from than he had imagined. Young Master, how is it? Silent Soul had followed Lin Yi for many years. He knew Lin Yi quite well. Seeing the expression on Lin Yi's face, she knew that Lin Yi's injuries were very serious. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such an expression. She couldn't help but worry even more. She looked up at Lin Yi and asked, I can only suppress my injuries for now. Let's go and take a look. I wonder how the four of them are doing. Lin Yi shook his head. Right now, he wasn't worried about himself. Instead, he was worried about Shun Yu and the others. They were teleported together. Although they were protected by his supreme sacred weapon and the spatial power, he didn't know what happened in the end. He didn't know how the four of them were doing. If they died in the teleportation, it would be really unjust. Immediately, the divine sense of the peak of the 55th order spread out. The terrifying divine sense swept out in all directions. Everything within a radius of 500 miles couldn't escape his divine sense. This was the terror and power of a divine sense saint. The magic of a divine sense saint was never something that a martial arts powerhouse could imagine. In less than a quarter of an hour, with him as the center, everything within a radius of 10,000 miles was scanned. However, nothing was found. Young Master, the teleportation is random. Maybe they're not around here. Silent Soul said. Her slender hand held Lin Yi's arm and supported Lin Yi. A divine sense saint was indeed powerful. However, Lin Yi was injured and constantly using his divine sense was too much for him. If this continued, Lin Yi's divine sense would be injured. Moreover, they were teleported from the distant heavenly purification territory. It was undoubtedly like looking for a needle in a haystack to find the others. Let's find out where we are first. Lin Yi nodded. Then, the two of them flashed and flew into the sky, flying into the distance. After 2 hours of flying, they finally saw a human. After asking around, they knew that this place belonged to the Tianlan True Domain. However, it was still very far away from the most prosperous place in the Tianlan True Domain. 6 hours later, A huge city appeared in their sight. Dongyu County City. The huge city had a magnificent aura. It exuded a majestic aura. In the air, countless people were flying in the air. Some were flying on beasts, while others were flying on swords. However, no matter who it was, they had to land outside the city and walk into the city. Moreover, they had to go through layers of checks before entering the city. This is the city of the Dongyu County. The Tianlan True Domain is indeed powerful. Just a county city is comparable to the imperial city of the heavenly purification territory, or even more powerful. I can't imagine how powerful the empire of the Tianlan True Domain is. On the official road, Silent Soul and Lin Yi looked at the city and sighed. The weakest we saw was the celestial realm. Half-saints are everywhere. Even saints can be seen everywhere. Lin Yi said. Although they had just arrived at the Dongyu County City and had not seen many human experts, the people they met were basically celestial realm and half-saints. They even saw quite a few saints. This was enough to show how powerful the Tianlan True Domain was. In the heavenly purification territory, the celestial realm was considered a powerful expert. However, in the Tianlan True Domain, the celestial realm was indeed the lowest level. Half-saints were not even considered powerful. Moreover, this was only a remote place in the Tianlan True Domain. If they were in the empire of the Tianlan True Domain, they might be able to see the great sage everywhere. Let's enter the city first. Let's find a place to settle down. Lin Yi gestured to Silent Soul and walked towards the city gate. Soon, the two arrived at the city gate. However, they were stopped. Both of you, show me your tokens. A third tribulation half-saint guard saw that Lin Yi and Silent Soul had triggered the city's defense and said, this was because everyone who entered the city had a unique token that was connected to the city's defense. If they did not have a token, they would be detected instantly by the city's defense. We are from the Heavenly Sun Empire. This is an identity crystal. Please take a look. Lin Yi's divine sense moved. An identity crystal appeared in his hand, and he handed it over. Silent Soul also handed over his identity crystal. Heavenly Sun Empire? The guard was stunned. He did not know where the Heavenly Sun Empire was. There was no such empire in the Tianlan True Domain. However, he saw that the identity crystal in Lin Yi's hand was indeed human. He reached out and took it. Then, he turned around and walked towards the city gate's pavilion. In the pavilion, there was a diamond-shaped crystal that was the size of a disc. The crystal emitted a mysterious light. The guard swept the identity crystal over the light, and a message appeared on the crystal's radiance. This message was Lin Yi's identity in the Heavenly Sun Empire. When the guard saw the message, he was shocked and a little disdainful. Chapter 380. From now on, you are from the Dongyu County. You must abide by the rules of the Dongyu County. This is your new identity information. After a while, the guard handed over Lin Yi and Silent Soul's identity chip and said seriously. But no matter how you looked at it, his eyes were full of disdain and contempt. But when he looked at Silent Soul, his eyes were burning. He almost went crazy. Understood. Lin Yi took the identity chip and put it away. He took Silent Soul and walked into the county city. After entering the county city, Lin Yi sighed in his heart. The Tianlan True Domain was indeed the Tianlan True Domain. It was not something the Tianlan True Domain could compare to. Although the Dongyu County City was not as big as the Dongyu County, the scenery and experts here were much better than the Dongyu County. Even the Tianyang Empire's Sky City could not compare to this county city. Master, let's find an inn first. Let's talk about it after you recover from your injuries. Silent Soul looked around as he walked. He wanted to find a quiet inn in the county city for Lin Yi to rest. It was his first time in the Tianlan True Domain. He did not know anything, and Lin Yi was still injured. Healing was the most important thing now. Okay, wait. Let's find a place where there is no one. Get Shui Feng and the rest out. Lin Yi nodded. Suddenly, he thought of Lai Tenyu and the rest who were still in the space pagoda. They were already doctrine saints and had come to the Tianlan True Domain. It was time for them to come out. The Tianlan True Domain was full of opportunities, and it was also their stage. As he spoke, he found a deserted alley, opened the ninefold space, took out the space pagoda, and used his divine thought to call Xue Feng and the rest out. Captain, Captain, after Lai Tenyu and the rest of the 40 people came out, they quickly suppressed their saint aura. They did not want to cause a huge spatial fluctuation and make him suspicious. Then they greeted Lin Yi. Captain, are you injured? What happened? Zhuge Ling was a woman, so she was very observant. She was the first to notice that Lin Yi was injured, and the injury was very serious. Otherwise, with the team leader's miraculous self-healing body, he would have recovered long ago. If he hadn't recovered yet, it meant that his injuries weren't optimistic. There were some problems during the teleportation. This injury cannot be healed for the time being. After you settle down, you can slowly recuperate. This is already the true sky billow domain. You should get to know it better. Lin Yi briefly explained how he got injured so that Sun Wuyu and the others wouldn't worry about him. He didn't want Sun Wuyu and the others to follow him. After all, there were more than a dozen powerful saints, and it was impossible for them not to be noticed. Moreover, they had just arrived at the Tianlan's true domain, so they had to learn more about it. All right then. Let's find out more about Dongyu Commandery first. Hearing Lin Ye's words, Sun Wuyu and the rest could not help but be stunned. None of them wanted to leave. However, he couldn't go against Lin Ye's wishes. He could only agree to Lin Ye's request. Moreover, they were only in Dongyu Commandery. Even if Lin Yi had something to do, they could rush over immediately. After saying that, they left quietly. They blended into the sea of people in the city. Rumble, rumble. Not long after Xue Feng and the others left, there was a rumbling sound on the streets of the city. Looking from afar, a king-level demon beast was pulling a chariot and rushing over. It was extremely fast. Countless experts made way for it. Some of the experts with lower cultivation were knocked away by the powerful chariot. In a few breaths, the chariot rushed in front of Lin Yi and Silent Soul without any intention of stopping. It looked like it was going to run over Lin Yi and Silent Soul. Courting death, Silent Soul's beautiful face revealed a trace of killing intent. She waved her slender hand. A terrifying force slammed towards the chariot across the air. Her cultivation realm was slightly lower than Lin Ye's, but she was still a fourth tribulation half-true saint. She possessed a terrifying domain and various saint artifacts. She could even fight a ninth tribulation half-true saint. A seventh tribulation half-true saint demonic beast couldn't withstand a single blow. Boom, it seemed like a casual slap. The space distorted. Then, the king-level demonic beast and the chariot were sent flying. The huge chariot fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. The king-level demonic beast was already dead. At the same time, when the chariot shattered, two figures soared into the sky. On the streets, countless experts were stunned. They didn't expect that someone would dare to attack the chariot. For a moment, they saw the attacker as a dead man. This was because the chariot belonged to the Pingyang army of Dongyu Commandery. The Pingyang army was in charge of all the legions in Dongyu Commandery. In the entire Dongyu Commandery, no one dared to provoke the Pingyang army. If they encountered the Pingyang army's chariot, they would avoid it. Even if they were killed, they could only blame themselves for being unlucky. But now, someone dared to attack the Pingyang army's chariot. He was simply courting death. Reckless fool. How dare you attack the Pingyang army's chariot? Are you rebelling? Two people flew out from the chariot. One was a young man, a ninth tribulation half-true saint. The other was a beautiful woman with a third tribulation half-true saint cultivation. The one who spoke was the young man. The young man's face was cold and filled with anger. He was the seventh young master of the Pingyang army. Wherever he went, people would avoid him. No one dared to provoke him. He was the tyrant of Dongyu Commandery. This time, he was in a good mood to go sightseeing with his fiancée. He didn't expect to be humiliated and almost went berserk. But in front of his fiancée, he had to act gentlemanly. More importantly, he saw Silent Soul, a peerless beauty who was 1,000 times more beautiful than his fiancée. "Get lost," Silent Soul said faintly. Her voice was like the sound of nature. She was gentle, pure, and charming. She was a natural beauty and rarely got angry. But this time, she was angry because if she didn't attack, he and the young master would have been killed by the chariot. Who is this? Good-looking. Too bad he offended the 7th young master of the Pingyang army. It should be his first time in the city. Offending the 7th young master is a fate worse than death. On the street, countless experts were watching. Seeing Silent Soul and Lin Yi offending the 7th young master, they couldn't help but feel pity. But more people were curious about Silent Soul's identity. "Bitch, you don't know what's good for you." The 7th young master's face became uglier. His aura exploded, and the pressure of a 9th tribulation half-true saint was released. It covered the sky and the earth as it crushed towards Silent Soul and Lin Yi. He wanted to suppress the two of them, with his style of doing things. Kill the man and capture the woman. "Young master." Silent Soul saw the 7th young master make a move. Her beautiful face showed a trace of hesitation as she looked at Lin Yi. "Kill them," Lin Yi said faintly. Chapter 381. Receiving Lin Ye's instructions, a trace of killing intent flashed across Silent Soul's beautiful face. She raised her slender hand, and a destructive light domain covered the sky and pressed down on the 7th young master. In terms of talent and cultivation, she might not be as good as those peak experts. But in terms of domain, even those peak experts couldn't compete with her in the same realm. 50,000 light domains. The power of her domain, not to mention a half-saint. Even a saint couldn't compete with it. Kacha, space was shattered. The 7th young master's face changed, and his eyes were filled with despair and unwillingness. He never thought that such a beautiful and weak woman would have a domain that made him despair. Even the saints of the army couldn't compete with such a terrifying domain. And this seemingly weak woman in front of him was only a 3rd tribulation half-saint, but she had a domain that surpassed a saint. Pucci, the destructive domain, suppressed the 7th young master. He spat out a mouthful of blood. His life force was quickly draining away, and there was no way to save him. On the street, there were hundreds and thousands of experts, and more people came to watch the show. In the past, fights were common in the county city, but very few people dared to kill so openly. Moreover, the one who died this time was the 7th young master of the army of Pingyang. All the experts were shocked when they looked at Silent Soul. Apart from shock, there was also regret. Offending the army of Pingyang, killing the 7th young master, and dying without a burial place. Whoosh! In the air, the woman who came with the 7th young master was stunned. Seeing Silent Soul kill her fiancé so quickly, she was terrified and didn't dare to reason with Silent Soul. She immediately sent out a distress signal. She knew that as soon as the signal appeared, people from the army of Pingyang would rush over. Sure enough, in less than 10 breaths, an earth-shattering saint aura rolled over. As the saint aura descended, countless heavenly humans and half-saints were pressed to the ground. Their bodies trembled, and their clothes were soaked in cold sweat. Their faces were filled with fear. "Where did you come from? How dare you touch the army's people?" Before the person arrived, the voice that carried an incomparably majestic aura could be heard. His voice was like a clap of thunder, causing pain in the eardrums. That expert rushed over as soon as he received the signal, but he didn't know that Silent Soul had already killed the 7th young lord of the general's residence. He only thought that someone from the general's residence was fighting. "It's the guards of the army." As the space fluctuated, a figure appeared in the line of sight of all the powerhouses. Seeing this figure, many experts recognized the identity of this newcomer. The person who came was a guard of the military residence, and his position was very high. Who murdered the 7th young master? The guard was a middle-aged expert in his 30s. He was clad in battle armor and looked majestic. Terrifying saintly might crushed this part of the world. The guard's expression changed when he saw that the seventh young master was no longer breathing. He had never imagined that someone would dare to kill the seventh young master of the army in the prefecture capital. His eyes swept around. His first glance was towards Silent Soul and Lin Yi. But his gaze didn't stop, and it swept past them. This was because he saw that Silent Soul and Lin Yi were only third and fifth tribulation half-true saints. It was impossible for them to kill the seventh young master. The only one who could kill the seventh young master in a short time was a saint. Obviously, Silent Soul and Lin Yi weren't in his consideration. His gaze swept around, and there were only two saints present. Instantly, the guard's saintly might spread towards the two saints. He had already regarded them as the murderers of the seventh young master. Mu Xiao, what do you want? Mu Xiao, the seventh young master wasn't killed by the two of us. The two saints' faces were cold. As saints, even if they were afraid of the army's power and influence, they had their own personalities and pride. Seeing Mu Xiao treat them as the murderers of the seventh young master, they were extremely unhappy. If it wasn't the two of you, who else could it be? Mu Xiao was naturally a guard of the army residence. Initial stage saints. He didn't believe the two saints, because other than the two of them, no one else had the power to kill the ninth tribulation half-true saint's seventh young master. But there were hundreds and thousands of experts present, and the two couldn't possibly be lying. Moreover, even if they were given 10 guts, they wouldn't dare to go against the seventh young master of the army residence. Captain Mu Xiao, the murderer is that bitch. In the air, Dong Yanning spoke. Her jade finger pointed towards Silent Soul. She was afraid of Silent Soul, but she didn't hold a grudge. In fact, Silent Soul had helped her by killing the seventh young master, because she really didn't want to marry the seventh young master of the army residence. But the army residence was powerful, and other than the East County's princess, the army residence was the strongest. But now that the seventh young master was killed, if the army residence blamed her, she wouldn't be able to escape death. Him. Mu Xiao looked in the direction Dong Yanning was pointing. His gaze landed on Silent Soul. When he saw Silent Soul, his heart couldn't help but tremble, and he almost lost himself. Because Silent Soul was too beautiful and alluring, even a saint like him couldn't resist such temptation. His strong state of mind allowed him to quickly return to normal. When he saw that Silent Soul was only a third tribulation half-true saint, he couldn't help but frown. A third tribulation half-true saint killing a ninth tribulation half-true saint? Was it possible? Obviously, in his opinion, it was impossible. Then, he looked at Lin Yi, who was beside Silent Soul. He realized that with his cultivation, he couldn't see through this young man's cultivation realm and strength. The only thing he could see was that this young man had terrifying injuries. Suddenly, a terrifying saint aura locked onto Lin Yi. He had already regarded Lin Yi as the murderer of the seventh young master. Get lost. Lin Yi looked coldly at Mu Xiao. A mere early stage, Saint actually dared to use Saint Aura to lock onto him. He was overestimating himself. As a spiritual will saint, he was incomparably noble, and ordinary saints couldn't compare to him. Even if he wasn't the one who killed the seventh young master, he wouldn't allow anyone to be arrogant in front of him. Moreover, he was the one who ordered Silent Soul to kill the seventh young master. So on the street, hundreds and thousands of experts couldn't help but sigh when they heard Lin Ye's words. A young man with unknown cultivation and injuries actually dared to speak to a saint like this. Was he tired of living? Reckless fool. Seems like you're the one who killed the seventh young master. You dare to attack the seventh young master of the military residence. You'll suffer a fate worse than death. Mu Xiao was furious. As the captain of the military residence's guards, a high and mighty saint, he was actually provoked and humiliated by a young man in front of so many people. How could he face the experts of Dongyu City in the future? This young man in front of him was definitely going to die, and he was going to make him suffer a fate worse than death. The seventh young master of the military residence? What is this? Running around on the street. Do you want me to stand and wait for death? Is there such a rule in Dongyu City? Or is this the rule of the military residence of Pingyang? Or is it that the military residence of Pingyang is above the princess in Dongyu City? Lin Yi stepped forward. He looked at Mu Xiao with disdain and said flatly, Chapter 382. Even if the seventh young master made a mistake, it's up to the military to punish him. At the very least, it's up to the princess to punish him. Plus, do you think the seventh young master is a reckless person? Murdering the seventh young master is a crime punishable by death. Mu Zhao's expression was ugly to the extreme. In his heart, he already hated Lin Yi to the bone. He had never thought that Lin Yi would actually use the princess to suppress the military. Moreover, he had suppressed the military completely. Otherwise, it would really be the case that the military was above the princess. Every word was a blow to his heart. He didn't dare to let Lin Yi continue. With a wave of his hand, unparalleled holy aura came crashing down. It directly enveloped Lin Yi and Silent Soul. Light Domain. Silent Soul knew that Lin Yi was injured and couldn't act rashly. In the current situation, she could only resist with her scalp. The difference between a third tribulation half-true saint and an early saint was huge. She wasn't Lin Yi. Lin Yi was a fifth tribulation half-true saint and could fight a saint, but she couldn't. The only thing she could use were her domain and supreme artifact. She couldn't use her supreme artifact unless she had no other choice. Therefore, only the light domain could resist Mu Zhao's holy aura. 50,000 light domains were stronger than Mu Zhao's domain, and Mu Zhao's face was filled with shock. A mere third tribulation half-true saint had such a terrifying domain. Her background was definitely not simple. But at this moment, he couldn't back down. He could only kill her. Rumble, rumble, the light domain formed a powerful curtain of light, enveloping her and Lin Yi. It resisted Mu Zhao's holy aura. For a moment, the space was constantly being crushed. The ground kept shaking. Countless experts prostrated themselves on the ground, unable to raise their heads under the pressure of the holy aura and the domain. Pucci, Pucci. In the end, the domain couldn't resist the holy aura of a saint. Lin Yi and Silent Soul spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Their bodies flew out like a kite with a broken string, landing heavily on the street. Silent Soul's light domain also disappeared at this moment. This was the difference between a half-true saint and a saint. If Silent Soul reached the saint realm, he could kill Mu Xiao. However, the difference between Solitary Spirit and Mu Xiao was like heaven and earth. Unless he used a supreme artifact. A supreme sacred weapon was enough to kill a saint like Mu Xiao if he was caught off guard. However, a supreme sacred weapon was earth-shattering and would definitely attract the covetous eyes of countless strong men. Third and fifth tribulation half-true saints. Ants, how did you plot against the seventh young master? He injured Silent Spirit and Lin Yi. At the same time, his heart was filled with shock and confusion. The third tribulation half-true Saint Realm woman and the fifth tribulation half-true Saint Realm young man combined couldn't compare to the seventh young master. How was the seventh young master killed? Not to mention him. Even if the seventh young master was a ninth tribulation half-true saint, he could kill them with a single hand. But the seventh young master was killed. Just an ant. I can crush you without lifting a finger. Similarly, you're an ant too. You're a lowly ant. Silent Soul wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stood up with difficulty. He then supported Lin Yi. She was worried that Lin Yi would make a move. If Lin Yi made a move, he could easily kill this early-stage saint. But Lin Yi's injuries would worsen, and it would be harder for him to recover. Rumble, rumble. Just then, the ground on the street shook. This shaking was the sound of footsteps. They didn't see anyone, but they could feel the surging aura. Instantly, the faces of the experts present turned fearful, and they hurriedly moved aside, not daring to get close to Mu Xiao and Lin Yi. They knew what this sound meant. Soon, hundreds of silver-armored guards appeared in their line of sight. Every single one of them was a ninth tribulation half-true saint. Moreover, there were 8 saints among these silver-armored guards. The guards of the military residence. Silver-armored legion, the most powerful legion in the military residence. It's said that the silver-armored legion has more than 10,000 people, and there are 300 saints in it. They are invincible wherever they go. I didn't expect them to appear now. Many of the experts present on the street recognized the origin of these silver-armored guards. Everyone's face was filled with shock and fear. When they looked at Lin Yi and Silent Soul, it was as if they were looking at dead people. The Pingyang military residence is so powerful. Tell me, what is the Pingyang military residence? The cold expression on Lin Yi's face relaxed. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He looked around, and his heart was filled with shock when he saw all the silver-armored guards. The military residence of a commandery had such a terrifying legion. Every single one of them was a ninth tribulation half-true saint, and there were many saints among them. In the cloudy sky kingdom, a ninth tribulation half-true saint was the pinnacle of the experts, enough to command an area. Here, they could only be an ordinary soldier of a legion. Guard captain, guard captain. When the hundreds of silver-armored guards arrived, they bowed to Mu Xiao. At the same time, they surrounded Lin Yi and Silent Soul. Take them and bring them away. It was rare for Mu Xiao to be long-winded with Lin Yi. He wanted to avoid trouble from the mouth. As he spoke, he ordered people to carry the 7th young master's corpse away. Although the 7th young master was a good-for-nothing, he was still the 7th young master of the military residence. Now that the 7th young master was dead, the military residence would definitely be angry. Thinking of this, his heart was filled with anger. Now, he could only bring the 7th young master's murderer back and let the military residence deal with him. Kill them all. Facing the hundreds of silver-armored guards, Lin Yi's expression was calm, but the words that came out of his mouth were shocking. Boom! Boom! Just as Lin Yi finished speaking, 2 destructive, saintly auras appeared in the air. One of them locked onto Mu Xiao, and the other locked onto the hundreds of silver-armored guards. The space on the entire street was constantly being destroyed. None of the experts could move at all. After the saintly auras descended, a huge handprint pierced through the clouds from the sky and crushed toward Mu Xiao. Mu Xiao's face was filled with fear, which gradually turned into despair. Because in front of the saintly auras, he had no power to fight back at all. He could only watch as the handprint descended. In his eyes, the handprint was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Puffed. Mu Xiao spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, his body was slammed onto the ground by the handprint, and his body quickly collapsed. His life was quickly fading away. At the same time, a ray of light appeared above the hundreds of silver-armored guards. The ray of light was peerless. It cut through the air and landed on the guards' heads. Hiss! Hiss! Wherever the ray of light passed, the hundreds of silver-armored guards were cut into pieces. Blood spurted into the sky. Even the 8 saints were not spared. They all disappeared under the attack. The saintly auras disappeared. The handprint disappeared. The ray of light disappeared. Everything returned to normal. The space was silent. Mu Xiao's corpse lay on ground. Over 100 silver-armored guards vanished in a thin air, leaving behind 8 saint corpses on the streets. Beside Lin Yi and Solitary Spirit, 2 young saints appeared. That's right, they were young saints. Chapter 383. The silence on the street was oppressive. Hundreds and thousands of experts were completely stunned at this moment. The expression on their faces was as if they had seen a ghost. A 5th tribulation half-true saint was able to kill over 100 silver-armored guards with just a few words. For a moment, other than shock, everyone was also curious about what was going on. They want to know the identity of Lin Yi and Silent Soul. They looked at the 2 young saints beside Lin Yi and Silent Soul. Their eyes were full of awe. One move killed hundreds of half-true saints and several saints. How powerful was this? It was simply unimaginable. More importantly, in the Dongyu County City, He dared to kill the people of the army Pingyang in broad daylight. An initial saint is so terrifying. Could he be a heaven-defying expert from a first-grade sect? Isn't this too terrifying? He dared to provoke the army Pingyang. He must be tired of living. It seems that the goddess-like woman is not simple. The identity of the young man in green is even more curious. I wonder where he came from. He dared to provoke the army Pingyang. Could he be a prince or heir of the empire? Countless experts recovered from the shock and were puzzled and curious. For a moment, there was a lot of discussion. All eyes were focused on Lin Yi and the other three. Let's find it in first. I want to see what the army Pingyang is made of. Lin Yi said indifferently. He knew that not all members of the god-battling team had left. Even if they had left, they would have stayed in the Dongyu County City. Because they were new here, they had to start from the Dongyu County City. You want to leave after killing the army of county? What do you think the army Pingyang is? Just as Lin Yi and the other three were about to leave, a loud and clear voice sounded. The first word of the voice was still a few miles away. When the last word was spoken, the owner of the voice had already appeared in front of Lin Yi and the others. The speed was so fast that it was like teleportation. The newcomer was a young man. The young man was dressed in purple, and his hair was combed neatly. Holding a folding fan in his hand, he looked very confident and at ease. However, the young man exuded an icy aura. With him as the center, everything within a 100-meter radius was frozen, and no one dared to take a step closer. After he arrived, dozens of powerful figures flashed in the air. The eldest son of the military family, the #1 monstrous talent of Dongyu County, becoming a mid-stage saint at the age of 40. The eldest young master is also an inner disciple of Shibu Gakuin. His strength is extremely terrifying. If they offend the army of Pingyang, they won't be able to get past the eldest young master. This time, they are doomed. You really don't know the difference between life and death. You actually dared to kill someone from the army. Countless people saw the purple-clothed youth. They all recognized the purple-clothed young man's identity and background. The purple-clad youth was none other than the eldest son of the Pingyang army, the #1 monstrous expert in the entire Dongyu County. He was a mid-stage saint, and he also had another identity. He was an inner disciple of the #1 sect in the Tianlan True Domain, Shibu Gakuin. Not only did he have the backing of the military, but he was also a disciple of Shibu Gakuin. No matter where he went, he was second only to one person. Who would have thought that a few foreign geniuses would dare to offend the army? Now that they had offended the eldest son, they would die without a burial place. There was no other outcome. The Tianlan True Domain was a world where the strong were respected. The bigger fist was the truth. You're right. We really don't take the army of Pingyang as anything, because the army of Pingyang is nothing, Sun Wuyu said with a smile. His face was calm, and he didn't feel pressured by the fact that the other party was a mid-stage saint. Instead, it aroused his battle intent, and he wanted to know how strong he was. Moreover, his cultivation had already reached the early stage Great Perfection Saint, and he was only one step away from becoming a mid-stage saint. The gap between their cultivation realms wasn't that big. Very good, very arrogant. I don't care who you are. Today, I will tell you the truth, and that is, you will suffer a fate worse than death. Remember, my name is Mu Tianjiao, an inner disciple of Shibu Gakuin. Mu Tianjiao looked coldly at Sun Wuyu. He was so proud that he naturally didn't take Sun Wuyu and Lai Tenyu seriously. Moreover, he had Dongyu Commandery and Shibu Gakuin behind him. It would be a piece of cake for him to kill a few foreign experts. Captain, I'll fight. Lai Tenyu stepped forward and said to Lin Yi. He knew that Lin Yi was seriously injured and couldn't fight. At this moment, what he wanted most was to fight someone of a higher level and see how strong he was. Moreover, a mid-stage saint from a commandery wasn't qualified to fight with Lin Yi. He would never forget the scene of Lin Yi killing the great sage. Okay, Lin Yi nodded. He wasn't worried about Lai Tenyu at all. He knew the strength of the god-battling team best. After reaching the saint level, they were even more terrifying and could easily kill experts of a higher level. Mu Tianjiao, was no exception. Do you think you're so great after killing a few ordinary saints? You're still ants in front of me. Heavenly cloud light. When Mu Tianzhou saw Lai Tenyu step forward, a disdainful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He was a mid-stage saint and wasn't invincible among his peers. But he was one of the top mid-stage saints and had killed a mid-stage saint before. It was a piece of cake for him to deal with a foreign early-stage saint. As he spoke, he waved the folding fan in his hand. Suddenly, a destructive brilliance came crashing down on Lai Tianyu from all directions. The saint power split the air, and the space trembled and shattered. It was a casual blow, but it had the power to destroy heaven and earth. This was the terror of a mid-stage saint. Countless experts who were watching the show were shocked when they saw the eldest young master Mu Tianzhou taking action. They knew that Lai Tianyu's fate would be death. Sword domain, God slaying. Lai Tianyu's figure flashed and floated in the air. He reached out, and a long sword appeared in his hand. 1,000 inscription, saint weapon. Yes, it was a 1,000 inscription saint weapon. When the saint weapon appeared, his sword intense soared, and his sword domain erupted. In an instant, he became one with the sword. One slash. He slashed at the void. At this moment, everyone's heart trembled. They didn't expect a beginner saint to be so terrifying. Even Mu Tianzhou, who had always been proud of himself, was shocked. He had only seen such power from those top middle-stage powerhouses. Crash! The space was shattered. Unparalleled sword radiance. It ruthlessly shattered Mu Tianzhou's beam of light. The blade light continued to slash towards Mu Tianzhou. It arrived before Mu Tianzhou in the blink of an eye. Mu Tianzhou's eyes, they were full of despair and disbelief. Puff! He was a mid-stage saint, the top genius of Dongyu City, and an inner disciple of Sibu Gakuin. He was killed by a 4 early-stage saint with one slash. Instant kill. Yes, this was a true instant kill. Chapter 384. Mu Tianzhou is dead. The eldest son of the army is dead. Mu Tianzhou is dead. Countless experts exclaimed in shock. Gradually, the news of Mu Tianzhou's death spread quickly. The experts of Dongyu County rushed to the place where Mu Tianzhou died. They all wanted to know who had the guts to kill Mu Tianzhou. To be able to kill Mu Tianzhou, one needed not only guts, but also terrifying strength. One must know, Mu Tianzhou was the top genius of Dongyu County. He was a mid-stage saint. Get lost if you don't want to die. I don't mind wiping out the army of Pingyang. Lai Tianyu's cold gaze was like his blade aura, sweeping across the army's saints, his cold voice spreading out. Many ants could kill an elephant. The army of Pingyang represented Dongyu County. Their strength was terrifying. They did not want to provoke the army of Pingyang unless they had no other choice. However, not causing trouble did not mean that they were afraid of trouble. It was the same for killing the 7th son and Mu Tianzhou. You killed the eldest son and the 7th son. You deserve to die. Kill them. The dozen or so saints who came with Mu Tianzhou had ugly looks on their faces. Most of them were terrified. Even someone as powerful as Mu Tianzhou had been killed by a single slash. It was unimaginable how powerful he was. If it was any other time, they would have definitely left and fled without a trace. However, they could not run away now. The eldest young master had been killed. If they cowered from the battle, the military would make sure that they died without a burial ground. They had no choice but to bite the bullet and hold on to a glimmer of hope in their hearts. With a dozen saints fighting against 2 saints, their chances were still very high. Rumble, rumble. Suddenly, the dozen beginner saints of the army fought with Lai Tenyu and Sun Wuyu. It was hard to tell who was better. Whoosh! There was a slight sound of something breaking through the air. A figure landed beside Lin Yi. Captain, let's end this quickly. There are invincible saints in Dongyu County. We should not stay here for long. Shuefeng and Zhou Baiyu are waiting for us outside the county. We will go directly to Tianlan True Domain's St. Martial Mountain. The person was wearing a cloak and a veil. Her face could not be seen clearly. However, she had a wonderful figure and was a beautiful woman. Zhuge Ling. It was Zhuge Ling, the only female member of the godly battle team. After she arrived, she whispered to Lin Yi. After she finished speaking, she waited for Lin Yi to make his decision. If Lin Yi wanted to stay in Dongyu City, the members of the godly battle team would naturally have to stay as well. Do it. Lin Yi nodded. According to his usual personality, he naturally wouldn't leave just like that. However, the situation was different now. This was no longer the Cloud Sky Kingdom. Instead, it was the powerful Sky Billow True Domain. Since it was his first time here, he didn't know anything about the Sky Billow True Domain. Moreover, there was an invincible saint here. Now that he had caused such a big commotion, if the invincible saint appeared, he would die without a burial place. Now, he had to leave Dongyu City as soon as possible. They headed to the core of the Tianlan True Domain, the St. Martial Heavenly Mountain. It was also the headquarters of Cebu Gakuen. There was one more thing. Cebu Gakuen would have a once-in-a-decade disciple recruitment in a month. If he rushed over now, he would really miss it. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked out of the city with silent soul. As for Zhuge Ling, she erupted with a destructive saint aura and joined the battle. 3 early-stage saints. They fought against a dozen early-stage saints. In a few moments, the battle ended. Whoosh whoosh, whoosh whoosh, Lai Tenyu, Sun Wuyu, and Zhuge Ling's figures flashed as they left Dongyu City. When they left the city, Lin Yi and Silent Soul had also just left the city. Outside the city, a 20-meter-tall, flying demonic beast emitted a terrifying aura. It was a ninth tribulation, half-true, Saint Emperor, realm demonic beast. An old man sat on the demonic beast. The old man was an early-stage saint, a very weak one. Captain. His name is Chun Yulin, a beast tamer. He rode the flying demonic beast to send us to the St. Martial Heavenly Mountain. The price is a low-grade 1,000 runes saint artifact. Zhou Baiyu saw Lin Yi and the others coming out. She was instantly overjoyed. She immediately introduced the old man sitting on the flying demonic beast. Let's leave first. Lin Yi nodded. He scanned the old man with his divine sense and found that the old man's cultivation wasn't strong, but it didn't mean that the old man was useless. Being able to summon and tame demonic beasts for him was a kind of ability. This powerful demonic beast was his battle partner. Whoosh whoosh, whoosh whoosh, immediately, everyone in the god-battling team flew onto the back of the demonic beast. After confirming that everyone was there, the old man used a special language to communicate with the flying demonic beast. Immediately, the flying demonic beast spread its huge wings and soared into the sky. Its wings were 100 meters wide. Its speed was extremely fast. It was comparable to a mid-stage saint. From here to the St. Martial Heavenly Mountain. How long will it take? Lin Yi sat cross-legged and healed his injuries as he spoke. He was surprised by the speed at which Zhuge Ling and the others gathered information. They entered the city at the same time and gathered information in less than 15 minutes. Even if the information wasn't considered a secret, it turned out that after Zhuge Ling and the others separated from Lin Yi, they found people to gather information and basic information about the Tianlan True Domain. They were all shocked when they learned that there might be an invincible saint in the Dongyu City. They also learned that Sun Wuyu and Lai Tenyu had a conflict with the military. So they quickly informed Lin Yi that they had to leave the Dongyu City as soon as possible to avoid unpredictable dangers. Chun Yulin said that it would take at least a month. If there are precious spiritual herbs for the flying demonic beast to replenish its energy, it would take 20 days. Zhang Xiaochu said seriously. A month was too rushed, and they might miss the recruitment of disciples in Cebu Gakuen. They wouldn't have a chance to enter Cebu Gakuen. However, Lin Yi had a quota and a chance. Cebu Gakuen was the #1 power in the Tianlan True Domain and the True Ruler. If Lin Yi could enter Cebu Gakuen to cultivate, he would be able to establish himself in the Tianlan True Domain. Cebu Gakuen recruits disciples once every 10 years. How much do you know? At the mention of Cebu Gakuen, Lin Ye's eyes revealed a trace of expectation and yearning. When he was in the Sky Sea realm, he was in Shengwu College. Cebu Gakuen was the headquarters of Shengwu College and was 1,000 times stronger than Shengwu College. Being able to enter Cebu Gakuen was his greatest hope, and now his hope was right in front of him. Cebu Gakuen recruits disciples once every 10 years. Although it's called an external recruitment, it's actually only targeted at the thousands of clans affiliated to Cebu Gakuen. Cebu Gakuen rules the Tianlan True Domain, and all the clans and sects in the Tianlan True Domain are affiliated to it. According to my understanding, only clans and clans that are 5th grade and above are qualified to participate in Cebu Gakuen's assessment. There are 15,231 5th grade clans and sections. There are 3,927 4th grade clans and sections. There are 1072 3rd grade clans and sections. There are 310 2nd grade clans and sections. There are 100 1st grade clans and sections. Xiao Yanqing said. As she spoke, her expression kept changing. The strength of the Tianlan True Domain was beyond her imagination. In the Tianlan True Domain, the 2nd grade clans and sects were at the peak. Only the Tianyang Empire and the Tianjin Empire were at the peak. There were more than 300 1st grade clans and sects in the Tianlan True Domain, but there were 100 of them here. It could be said that Chapter 385. It is indeed terrifying. Lin Yi was shocked as well. The number of these clans and sects was enough to drown the heavenly purification territory. Compared to the Tianlan True Domain, the heavenly purification territory was like an ant compared to a dragon. In other words, there was no comparison at all. 5th grade sects have 1 quota. 4th grade sects have 2 quotas. 3rd grade sects have 4 quotas. 2nd grade sects have 8 quotas. 1st grade sects have 16 quotas. After the statistics, there are more than 30,000 geniuses who participated in the Cebu Gakuen assessment. Everyone who participated in the assessment had to be at least a 5th tribulation half-true saint and possess a physique above the spiritual body. In the end, Cebu Gakuen recruited 1,000 geniuses. Xiao Yanqing said unhurriedly. Lin Yi gradually understood how harsh Cebu Gakuen's recruitment process was. Only 1,000 geniuses remained out of the 30,000. Moreover, among these 1,000 people, 900 were outer disciples and 100 were inner disciples. In Cebu Gakuen, the disciples were divided into outer and inner disciples, as well as true disciples and young palace masters. Is the Shun family among the 100 clans? Lin Yi asked. Cebu Gakuen's recruitment process required the most powerful geniuses from the affiliated forces. It seemed a little xenophobic, but those who knew the situation in the Tianlan True Domain did not think so. This was because everyone in the Tianlan True Domain belonged to Cebu Gakuen. Even geniuses who did not belong to any clan or sect would be recruited by some sects and clans. He came from the Heavenly Purification Territory, which was considered a subsidiary of the Tianlan True Domain. However, he did not know if the Heavenly Purification Territory was on the list of these forces. All of a sudden, he thought of Shun Yunlian. Shun Yunlian asked him to go to the Tianlan True Domain, so he must have some connections here. Yes, the 1st grade Shin family. They are ranked 87th. Xiao Yanqing answered Lin Yi without hesitation. As a saint, she had an eidetic memory. As long as it was news, it could be easily obtained. Saints can't participate in the assessment? Lin Yi confirmed again. To be honest, the talents of Zhang Xiaochu and the others were considered strong in the Cleansed Heavens territory. However, they were not outstanding in the True Sky Billow domain. They could not be compared to the monstrous talents of the True Sky Billow domain who had participated in the assessment. However, their cultivations were terrifying. If he could participate in the assessment, he would have a high chance of entering Cebu Gakuen. Naturally, he didn't know. During the last few days in the Grand Xia, the physiques of Zhang Xiaochu and the others had undergone a miraculous transformation. All of them now had emperor physiques. No, you must be between the fifth and ninth tribulation half-true saint realm, within the age of 50. Xiao Yanqing shook her head. They were also disappointed that they couldn't enter such a powerful force. Next, Lin Yi had obtained some basic information about the True Sky Billow domain from Zhang Xiaochu and the others. It was only a matter of time before he integrated into the True Sky Billow domain. I'll treat my injuries first. Lin Yi's eyes flickered with anticipation and yearning. After pondering for a moment, he said indifferently, during the teleportation, he had been torn apart by the power of space. Forcefully supporting the supreme Saint artifact had caused his injuries to be unable to heal in a short period of time. The danger this time was beyond his imagination. Moreover, the destruction during the teleportation made him feel powerless. After that, Lin Yi entered a state of recuperation. The others were in charge of safety. Time passed day by day. On the 25th day, a boundless sea of buildings appeared in everyone's sight. That boundless sea of buildings was the St. Martial Heavenly City. The St. Martial Heavenly City was built around the St. Martial Heavenly Mountain. The St. Martial Heavenly City is right in front. I can't go any further, the old man said. The flying demonic beast he was sitting on also came to a stop. There was yearning and fear on its face. Why? Lin Yi asked. During this period of time, his injuries had completely healed. Only members of the second and first rank clans can enter the St. Martial Heavenly City. Others have to pay 10 Saint Stones as a deposit to enter the St. Martial Heavenly City. The cost is 1 Saint Stone per day. Although I got 1,000 inscriptions Saint artifact from you this time, I don't have the capital to enter the St. Martial Heavenly City. But I don't have the capital to enter the St. Martial Heavenly City. Besides, entering the Heavenly City is of no help to me. Instead, it will consume Saint Stones. I might as well use those Saint Stones to cultivate. The old man Qin Yuan said with a wry smile. Only members of the second and first rank clans could enter and live in the St. Martial Heavenly City. Others had to pay 1 Saint Stone per day to enter. Captain in the Divine Land, the Tianlan True Domain, and the other 3 domains all use Saint Stones. 1 Saint Stone is equivalent to 100 million spirit crystals, or even more, Zhuge Ling said. Zhuge Ling said, the Tianlan True Domain was no longer like the Heavenly Purification Domain. In the Heavenly Purification Domain, spirit crystals were the most popular currency. In the Tianlan True Domain, spirit crystals were not used at all. Saint Stones were used everywhere. Saint Stones, do you have any? Lin Yi was stunned. He then looked at Zhang Xiaochu and the others. He did not know if they had any Saint Stones. Anyway, he did not have any Saint Stones. He did not even have many spirit crystals, let alone Saint Stones. All he had were treasures and resources. No, no, no. Shui Feng, Zhang Xiaochu, and the others all shook their heads. They did not have any Saint Stones and looked embarrassed. You must be from outside the barbaric sea. I have some Saint Stones here, but not many. You can use cultivation resources and treasures to pay me back. After entering the city, you can find a way to get Saint Stones. I am an honest man. Take a look. If you think it's okay, I have 1,000 Saint Stones here. At this time, Chun Yulin, who had not left, walked over with a cunning smile and said, after speaking, he took out a jade slip. Suddenly, the jade slip showed the prices of countless resources, materials, and saint weapons. 100 inscription saint weapon, 50 Saint Stones. 1,000 inscription saint weapon, 1,000 Saint Stones. 10,000 inscription saint weapon, 100,000 Saint Stones. Low-grade Saint Elixir pill, 10 Saint Stones. Middle-grade Saint Elixir pill, 100 Saint Stones. The names of treasures and resources, as well as the corresponding prices, were in the hundreds. These resources and treasures were commonly used by the experts in the Tianlan True Domain. Looking at these prices, Lin Yi had a rough understanding of the resources in the Tianlan True Domain. He did not have a single Saint Stone with him. However, There were many saint weapons and cultivation resources that he did not need. He could use them to exchange for saint stones. I'll exchange them for 1,000 saint stones. He used his divine thought. A dozen saint weapons and materials appeared in front of him. There were both 100 inscription saint weapons and 1,000 inscription saint weapons. Chapter 386. They exchanged for saint stones and entered St. Martial City. The group split up. They prepared to settle down in St. Martial City. St. Martial City was definitely the most ancient, prosperous, and vast city anyone had ever seen. It was the heaven and stage of the true experts. Silent soul, find a market and deal with these things. Just casually learn about St. Martial City. I'll go to the Shun family first. Looking at the flourishing city, Yi Zichen smiled. Lin Yi was shocked. This was a paradise. Cebu Gakuin's headquarters was indeed extraordinary. The entire St. Martial City belonged to Cebu Gakuin. In other words, the entire Tianlong True domain belonged to Cebu Gakuin. Thinking of the countless saint stones he would need to spend in St. Martial City, he had nothing on him. However, he had a lot of saint weapons and some resources he didn't need. With a thought, a spatial ring appeared in his hand. He put all the resources he didn't need and the saint weapons below the 1,000 patterns into the spatial ring and handed it to Silent Soul. He asked Silent Soul to go to the market and deal with them. And he went to the Shun family alone. The great emperor of the Tianyang Empire belonged to the Tianlong True Domain's Shun family. Naturally, to participate in the Cebu Gakuin's assessment in the Tianlong True Domain, he had to go to the Shun family first. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be qualified to participate. At the same time, he wanted to see if Shun Yu and the others had arrived. Take care, young master. I'll be there before the assessment. Solitary Spirit received the spatial ring, and his figure flashed strangely, disappearing without a trace. Half-saints were basically the weakest in St. Martial City. Among the 10 people, there were 3 heavenly beings, 5 half-saints, and 2 saints. This was the strength of St. Martial City. The Shun family. They were ranked 87th in St. Martial City and had been in St. Martial City for 10,000 years. They were powerful and had a deep foundation. If they were in other places, they would definitely be an overlord. However, they were only ranked 87th in St. Martial City. There were more than 80 sects and clans above them. No matter what, the Shun family was a first-class family affiliated with Cebu Gakuin. The once-in-a-decade Cebu Gakuin's disciple recruitment test had all the geniuses of the Shun family rubbing their palms in anticipation. Not only the Shun family, but all the geniuses of the 5th grade sects and above in the entire Tianlong True domain were eager to participate. This was because only by joining Cebu Gakuin, one's family or sect would have the opportunity to advance in front of Cebu Gakuin. No family or sect wanted their disciples to become Cebu Gakuin students. Joining Cebu Gakuin and gaining a foothold in Cebu Gakuin would bring benefits to his family and sect. In this half a month, Shun Yunlian recommended 4 people. Isn't this a waste of the Shun family's quota and resources? In the main hall of the Shun family, the elders and geniuses wore unpleasant looks on their faces. This was because during this period of time, there were 4 decent, demonic, strong cultivators who came. They were all recommended by Shun Yunlian, an external disciple from Tianmu region. The 4 of them were indeed geniuses. They were slightly weaker than the geniuses of the Shun family. In terms of strength, the 4 of them could rank in the top 15. The Shun family had 16 quotas. If the 4 of them were given, the other 4 would be squeezed out. This made some of the disciples of the Shun family unhappy. Who the hell is Shun Yunlian? He's just a branch in a remote place far away. He hasn't contributed anything to the Shun family. Instead, he's wasting the Shun family's resources. In my opinion, we should just cut off this branch. The 7th elder of the Shun family said. His grandson might be squeezed out of the quota. Naturally, he was unhappy. What the seventh elder said makes sense. If it were any other time, we could forgive him. It's just a waste of the Shun family's resources. But this time, they sent 4 people directly, wasting the Shun family's 4 spots to enter the Sacred Martial Academy. If this continues, the Shun family will be surpassed by some second-rank clans and sects sooner or later and become a second-rank clan. The third elder put down the teacup in his hand and said calmly. He had always been at odds with the seventh elder, but this time he agreed with the seventh elder. This was because one of the quotas from his branch might be snatched away. The Shun family only has 16 quotas. No one can change it. Let them become disciples of the Shun family. At most, we'll give them more cultivation resources. What do you think, clan leader? The first elder said. Once he spoke, he eliminated the chances of the 4 outsiders and made them lose the opportunity to take the test. After he finished speaking, he looked at the middle-aged man sitting on the main seat. The middle-aged man was the current clan leader, Shun Tiampung. The existence of a peak saint had terrifying strength. Outside the Shun family mansion, a young man in green clothes around 20 years old came to the door. Stop right there. This is the Shun family. There were 2 guards who were beginner saints at the entrance. They sized up the young man when they saw him and sneered disdainfully as they spoke. It's the Shun family. I'm Lin Yi from Tiamu region. I'm here to visit the clan leader of the Shun family. The young man was Lin Yi. It took him 2 days to come to the Shun family. He wanted to give a try because he was not sure if Shan Yunlian was related to the Shun family of the Tianlan True Domain. After he finished speaking, he glanced at the 2 guards. Tiamu region again. Show me your identity crystal. The guards were stunned and said as if they were used to it. During this period, several geniuses from Tiamu region had come to visit the clan leader of the Shun family. They did not expect another one to come. Lin Yi saw the guards' expressions and words. He could not help but feel happy. Again, this meant that the people in front were probably Shun Yu and the rest. There was no one else from Tiamu region other than them. Without hesitation, he handed over the identity crystal. Follow me. The guards checked the identity crystal and confirmed that there were no mistakes. They returned the identity crystal to Lin Yi and led Lin Yi into the Shun family. In the main hall of the Shun family, Shun Tianping's expression was calm, but his heart was in turmoil. Although the 4 people recommended by Shan Yunlian were talented and had a chance to become Sibu Gakuin's disciple and bring glory to the Shun family, this quota was really difficult. After all, the Shun family only had a total of 16 quotas. There were so many disciples in the Shun family who wanted to participate in the assessment that they would break their heads to get the quota. Moreover, these quotas were for the most talented geniuses in the Shun family. If they were replaced, it would definitely cause some internal conflicts in the Shun family. At this moment, a guard entered the main hall nervously. He bypassed the geniuses and elders and came to Shun Tianping's side. He whispered to Shun Tianping through telepathy. Shun Tianping's originally calm expression could not help but frown at this moment. Clan leader, don't tell me there's another one. The geniuses and elders in the main hall. Seeing the clan leader's expression, they could not help but be stunned. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.